Hey, team players, welcome back. Tuesday episode. Hopefully, everybody joining us today has pushed their way into the next round of the playoffs. Some squeaky wheel treatment. Yesterday. Darnell Mooney, 0 points. Sincere McCormick hurt himself. Lots of questions from yesterday surrounding Atlanta and Vegas. Myers showed out under 18.5 points. Bijan showed up. Jeff showed up. Lots of crazy stuff was happening yesterday in the first half. Even crazier things happening in the second half. So everybody that's joining us today, welcome. We have
Bob, unless I miscounted, it felt like the majority of what our guys needed yesterday came to pass.
Yeah, it was a little bit spicy. I remember we were talking. I can't remember who exactly we were talking to. They needed Bijan, Keenan Allen, and someone else, Mooney, to go under 15 points apiece on average, and that hit because Mooney did nothing.
Oh, yeah, Mooney delivered on that.
Mooney did nothing. So thanks to Darnell Mooney to pushing some people through to the next round of the playoffs.
And I know there were some people debating between McCormick and Mooney, and both were just bad. I mean, there's just no
McCormick better than Mooney,
happiness there.
So Steve, it's good to see that you're in the second round of the playoffs. Love to see that in the big money league. Round 2. Cowboys, Eagles, Colts. I want the Colts, but I heard Mason Rudolph is starting, and I think he's better than Will Levis. Core concept here, Steve, he is better than Will Levis. If you talk to Joe a year ago, 2 years ago, he's actually one of the players that he wanted the Steelers to actually keep. He thought that he was one of the better quarterbacks on the Steelers roster. And while not a godsend from above, he is a better quarterback in terms of being a pure quarterback than Levis. So
100% was better than the two Steelers alternatives if you go back to it, which were what the hell? I'm blanking on the guy's name. Trubisky,
gross,
and then obviously the one from Pitt who sucks.
Well, you know me. I love the idea of a successful Mitchell Trubisky, but in the core of things, it never really happened. So as I see it right here, Steve, I do think still that the Colts is an interesting play. But as I said yesterday, I don't think that they're an extremely good play because they did let Bo Nix come back in the second half of that game. And the offense just isn't very good to keep the defense, to keep the other team's offense off the field a lot. So I'm not willing to hedge my bet. And they don't cause that many. I mean, they got interceptions off of Nix last week, but they're not like a ball hawking team. I'd be okay with it. But I do think that when you look at what's going on this week in terms of these other teams, I think it's a tough sled for all three of these defenses, actually. Washington is a tough matchup for Philly. And the Cowboys get Tampa Bay, who can run the ball and pass the ball at a really high rate, depending on what they want to do. So out of the three, I'd still be on the Colts, but I would try to really look elsewhere to see if something else is out there. Looking yesterday at how Atlanta played a very bad offense, I am willing to invest in Atlanta this week if they're still somewhere on the waiver wire. As Joe has talked about a lot, I would be willing to invest.
You mean against Atlanta?
Yeah. No. I'd be playing Atlanta against New York, the Giants. Atlanta's playing against the Giants this week. I'm willing to invest in Atlanta. I'm also willing to play Cincinnati this week. If Cleveland starts Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I really think that he doesn't really offer that much in terms of being a pure passer. It's not like they have a running game to really talk about very much. And Cincinnati, in a game where they cause turnovers to Will Levis as well. They're not a dominant defense by any stretch of the imagination, but Cleveland isn't a dominant offense without Jameis Winston. So I keep my head on a swivel about that defense. If Cincinnati is going up against DTR, I could totally see myself walking in Cincinnati. If they're playing Jameis Winston, I don't think it's an option. So in the order that I would put them in, I would go Colts, then I would go Cowboys, or then I go Eagles and then Cowboys. But, I think it's a tough sell on all three, in my personal opinion. Joe, how do you feel about that?
It is. I mean, that's. I can't see myself taking Cincinnati. I mean, let's just start with this. I know that Cincinnati took a gajillion picks But I can't do that here. The best defense is definitely the Eagles of your list. And that's the one
but the
I would
matchup isn't good. I mean,
because
they're still a 3.5 favorite though, so that kind of points in the direction that Philly would be a good option.
Philly's the best unit by far when you talk about the actual players on the field, right? So starting point there, and then we dive into what we project for as the points against for the week. Quick little highlighter here. Make sure I'm not missing any obvious ones here.
Yeah. I mean, and just as a note, last time they played the Commanders, it was 26-18 Philadelphia. So,
Philly's right. So of your tiers, here's what we got for points against.
Yeah.
Philly's projected to let up 21. Dallas is projected to let up 26 in a losing effort. And the Colts are projected to let up 19.5. So that's a 1.5 that you can argue the Colts. But the thing with Mason is he's kind of playing with nothing to lose, right? I mean, he threw his picks yesterday because the receivers didn't go where they were supposed to. That pick he threw was 100% on the receiver. He put the ball where it was supposed to be. So I don't see Mason as being a big turnover machine. I also don't see them scoring a lot of points, period, though.
But here's the same thing, Joe.
You can run through the Colts, though. I guess that's my bigger issue.
But to that end, the Commanders are playing with everything to lose. So, they're going to be a little bit more down. That's why I would push myself away from the Eagles in this matchup because they played well the first time around. I'd push myself into the Colts, but I'd also think about other defenses, Steve, in my opinion. Start Purdy or Kyler this week, Lipsy. My Tuesday lean, and the Tuesday lean is always kind of a little bit up in the air, but I am willing to bank my bets on Brock Purdy again. And here's why. Just as a quick hit, I'm just going to give you one reason why. Kyler Murray doesn't have to run the ball. And the best way and the most successful games of Kyler Murray, he's run the ball. So this is a matchup that doesn't dictate that. If you want to talk about this more a little bit later, Lipsy, I'm on Brock Purdy pretty firmly out of these two guys. And maybe I'm jaded on Kyler. Maybe I am. But I just can't see a pathway, especially after last week, that Kyler's throwing the ball 30-plus times a game or 28-plus times a game and still not scoring a top 5 fantasy week for a quarterback. That's absurd to me. With that amount of pass attempts and you're still not scoring at a high rate, I just can't invest in it. And Purdy's had 2 bad weather games in a row. He's not a bad quarterback. This is just bad weather games. He's not a bad quarterback. And in terms of your flex question here, Lipsy, 2-man flex, James Cook, Jennings, Devonta, Rico, or Jerry Jeudy. As long as DTR is in, Lipsy, if DTR is the quarterback, and the coach said that he'll make a decision on that later this week, if DTR is the quarterback, I can't be on Jerry Jeudy. I just don't trust what DTR can do as a quarterback. He's not a good quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. I can't figure why they'd want to start him over Winston. I just don't see it. Going into that respect, then, in order to win this game, in order for Philadelphia to win this game, they are most likely going to have to attempt a number of passes that they wouldn't have had to do with most other teams. If you're just looking at the matchup the last time they played the Commanders, he did throw, Jalen Hurts did throw 28 times. And in that effort, I believe, was that the game? I'm going back and looking at it right now. I just want to make sure. So Dallas Goedert was playing in that game, and you know that Dallas Goedert and Devonta Smith's target share are very closely tied together to one another. So I could see myself in a game that matters for both of these teams. It's a significant. It's going to be. It's still a game that matters. It's a divisional matchup. It matters. I could see myself easily talking about getting into Devonta Smith. After everything that I've said, he's still commanding a good share of targets on a team. I'm just worried about Jalen Hurts' pass attempts. If they don't have to pass it, then he's not going to get the rub. Insofar as that's true about Purdy, that I said earlier, Purdy has a pathway to be successful. And if Purdy has a pathway to be successful, Jennings has a pathway to be successful. The volume was there last week. The volume was there the week before. It's just that the bad weather kept that volume from producing anything. So I'm still willing to trust Jennings. And then as it goes here with Cook, I think you just need to keep your head on a swivel with James Cook, is that he's splitting snaps really, really in an interesting way with Ray Davis and with Ty Johnson. And in order for James Cook to be what you want him to be and what he has been in the past for you, is he has to get a touchdown or two. If he's not getting that touchdown or two, his yardage is very unpredictable, especially in this matchup where they're probably not going to be New England's probably not going to be competitive for a very long time in this game. And if they are, it's going to be in the third and fourth quarters, most likely. And in the first quarter, Cook will have to score his touchdowns early because they will lay off the brakes on Cooks if it happens to be in the third and fourth quarter that they have the lead. So if I'm looking at it and I'm looking at a whole game, and not to mention Rico here, Rico's in a good matchup, but it's a matchup that he could get scripted out of. His percentage of runs and snaps does go down if Dallas happens to be out of the game and has to pass it a little bit more. So if you're looking for Rico to have, again, this Tuesday lean, if you're looking for Rico to have 25 plus carries, I'm not sure he gets that in this game. So I would go Devontae and Jennings, even though that the touches are going to be less than the running backs. But I could see myself walking into Cook. But my initial Tuesday lean is just that I'm a little bit nervous how that game script is going to go. How do you feel about that, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at as far as the game script of the Buffalo game, they're one of the biggest projections we have on the board, which, guys, about to come up here in like 30 seconds. I'm going to make it the background. But we're projecting Buffalo to win by 9. I mean, it's going to be a blowout where they should just run away with it. That being said, we also projected to be one of the highest scoring games of the week, though, with Buffalo being actually the highest projected points for in the week. So when we look at that, I love the running backs in a blowout game like that. So Cook is certainly going to be one of my.
But they have 3. I mean, that's the thing. They don't need to use Cook if they don't need to. Like, that's what I'm worried about.
I get that, but I also look at it from this standpoint of, again, I'm assuming that health will be fine, that you want to get him geared up for the playoffs. And, we look and see what Buffalo's there. They're going to score. Even if they split between all 3 of them, what I actually think is I think it's a down game on their passing attack and just overall more upgraded game on their running. So that's how I would look at it. I certainly don't want to go with Jerry Jeudy. He has to be eliminated off the list. I've never been a big Rico.
Joe, I just want to break this.
Devontae would be my second guy for you there, Lipsy.
I just want to tell you this, okay? I just want to be very clear, Lipsy.
Be clear.
I know how to Cook had a great game. Bones, we see in the chat. We see Austin and Jesse. Jesse, welcome. Jose, we see you. RCA, we see you as well. We'll get to all the questions, but I just want to bring up this point about Cook. Because I think it's a very relevant point when it comes to this game. Over the last 3 games, if snap share is an important factor in your decision, Lipsy, over the last 3 games, he has not eclipsed 50% of Buffalo's snaps. 45,
which is a big deal.
45, 41. The other running backs were at 30%, 28%, in and around there. That's what makes me nervous about James Cook. That's what made me not trust him last week. And that's what continues to not make me trust him this week. I get concerned about things like snap share in a game where they don't have to.
So you're not concerned about the Niners, and I am. I guess this is part we need to discuss here. I fear the Niners are just out of it, and they're done, and they're calling it a day. This is why I always go with the team that's in it more. I get it. This is coming back to the risk that Buffalo is winning by too much. Well, I like taking teams that we risk that about because every other time this year is paid out. With the exception of Lamar getting benched in the fourth quarter, but he still put up enough points to get us through the next round. So, I look at it and say, give me the guy who's on the higher scoring team because he's still their best running back. That part doesn't go away. I get that they're splitting his usage. He's still their best back.
It doesn't go away, but for you to say that the 49ers have given up, I think is unfair.
No, I'm not saying I think they are now. I think we've hit because now they're eliminated. They aren't catching that division now.
But when 2 out of the last 3 games were terrible weather games, I mean, you can't say.
Oh no, yeah, I'm not basing this on those last 2 games. I'm basing it upon their present reality of today. Today they're screwed. Those 2 games they had a chance. Yeah, it sucked that the rain came down like crazy in the blizzard before that, but that's the reality they got dealt, and the Rams are going to run away and win this division.
So, Steve, I need one flex: Hopkins, Pacheco, QJ, Njoku if he plays, or I can pick up McMillan. I'd pick up McMillan. The matchup for Tampa Bay is actually pretty good. You know, we can talk until we're blue in the face about you know, points given up. But what we have seen over the last several weeks with Baker Mayfield, and I'm going to just bring this to the point of what we were talking about, Nick Westbrook-Akine, is that his targets weren't there. And what has happened with Calvin Ridley in that same market is that Ridley's targets have become less valuable the less that they've been moving the ball and getting in the red zone. But Tampa Bay has no problem.
That's really contradictory.
Right? But Tampa Bay has no problem moving the ball. They have 2 really capable running backs, 3 if you count Sean Tucker. They have Mike Evans, who's back, healthy again. They have a tight end who, if they used him, would continue to be productive. And, you know, it's one of those things where I look at it and I say, all of the data that you can use to support, you know, lots of different players, you could support Jalen McMillan in this situation. You know, yeah, when you look at schedule adjusted things, yes, that causes a concern for a guy like McMillan. But I think out of all of these options that you have here, that the guys that have the best chance at touchdowns right now in the current environment is Hopkins, QJ, Njoku, McMillan. And when you order that in terms of how many targets and how many snaps these players are playing, you know, and you just look at the wide receiver market in terms of snaps, Steve, you look at it and you say, hey, Hopkins is sitting here. He's had 59%, 55% of the snaps, and then 45% of the snaps over the last several weeks. This data comes from Fantasy Pros. Just as a, you know, like as a quick aside here. And then you look at Jalen McMillan, he's at 76%, 79%, 64%. So he's on the field. He's on the field more. We talked about Hopkins having that weird thing in his contract potentially a couple weeks back. And QJ is on the field a lot, but he's not getting targeted as much in that same framework. So I think I would lean McMillan. If Winston plays and Njoku is healthy, I'd be on Njoku. But out of all these, I'm on McMillan because Pacheco's carries just aren't valuable right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love McMillan. I mean, I'm not going to hate the McMillan right. I like it.
If it's DTR, Cleveland's screwed, man. If it's DTR, Cleveland's screwed.
So, I mean, they
so
have
bad.
been, but Cleveland also has to play DTR. I mean, they have to.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do, because you're not playing Winston next year. You got to find out if you have something in this kid.
No, you don't. They tried it. They tried it last year. They had nothing with this guy. Nothing. I mean, Joe, let's be brutally honest, okay?
But you already know Winston is not your answer.
Yeah, but you know Dorian Thompson-Robinson is not your answer. That's why you brought in Jameis Winston.
All right, well, one of 2 things. They still got a chance of getting a top 5 pick here. DTR gives them a better chance of that if he does fail.
The guy threw last year against the Steelers threw 43 passes, completed 24 for 165 yards.
That's
Jameis
really
Winston
bad.
Jameis Winston can throw that same thing and get 400 yards. The guy sucks. He's not good.
It's not in their best interest to win anymore, Bob.
It's not in their best interest to start him, I don't think either. Lipsy, since I lost
I think that is in their best interest when it's not to win.
Who's the best pickup? Ford, Kendre Miller, Kamara might not even play, or Thielen, McMillan, Bateman is just for a bench spot. I'd be picking up Kendre Miller, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, there's a lot of content out there, and a lot of, you know, we even spoke about it ourselves for many weeks, and that Kamara's usage and Kamara and the whole, you could see it on the Saints over the last 7 weeks of the season. The drive, the ability. I mean, once you lost Taysom Hill, and even then Taysom Hill was terrible for the running game of Kamara and for anybody else who was back there, right? Because he was taking all those very valuable looks in the red zone, and he was breaking off carries that Kamara just wasn't doing. Kendre Miller is right now younger, a little bit more spry, maybe not as better or as classical as Kamara is in terms of the pass game and whatnot. But out of these guys, I am purely on Kendre Miller and McMillan. You could walk into a Bateman conversation, but again, guys, Bateman is when Bateman goes off, it's because of the right scenario. It's because of the right coverages. It's because Lamar tracks him in. And you can even very consistently see when Bateman is super successful, Flowers is not as successful. Yep. So, it's a very...
And Flowers has faded.
Yeah, it's a very real thing where, Lamar Jackson is doing well against these defenses and knowing where he can take his chances. And that's why Bateman has been successful in a couple of weeks. But I'm purely on Kendre Miller and McMillan. I'm more worried about Thielen over the last couple of weeks. A couple of weeks back, we said that Thielen would probably fade a little bit if Coker were back in.
Coker back.
If this is for just a bench spot, I would rather take the two guys that have the best chance at probably as getting a really high target share, really high touch capacity, and potential for some touchdowns. That would be McMillan. Kendre would be that kind of volumatic play. I'd be on Kendre and McMillan because I am worried about Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I like Ford, but,
See, mine's Kendre, no questions asked. Give me young legs this time of the year that are fresh. He has basically no wear and tear on him. And he's going to be playing other teams that have garbage on him. You look at what the Saints are about to run through. It's nothing that's going to be, he's going to ruin his life. He's a infinitely better player than Sincere, and all you guys kept doing was wanting to play Sincere, and Kendre is so much better than him.
Joe, to that end, I did say yesterday he had to hit that ceiling, but I also said in order to get to 60 yards, he's probably going to have 10 or 11 carries. He ran 7 times for 8 yards. That was awful. So all those metrics that I was throwing at you were accurate. I mean, it's not that he's a great player. It's just that you want to take a guy that has some inherent volume, and that's the Kendre Miller play. If he can get 15 touches, he's going to have some valuable enough time and effort. And like you said, the Saints aren't the Saints are a team that aren't very good right now. They're really not.
Nope.
So, but the problem lies in that this week, when do they face the Packers? Is that week 17 or this week?
The Saints?
I think, yeah.
Saints play the Packers this week on Monday Night Football.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, right now they're 13.5-point underdogs.
Yeah,
we don't have them that big, but yeah.
I probably wouldn't start Kendre Miller this week. By no stretch of the imagination, because the Packers can just wear you out with Josh Jacobs. They don't even have to throw the ball. But against the Raiders and the Bucs, yeah, sure. If I wanted a guy this week, Lipsy, which you don't, it'd be McMillan. But there you go. George, I love the close win here. 1.7 last night after Kirk failed to throw a single pass to Drake in the fourth quarter. Yeah, I was watching that too. He went 1 for 30 and a touchdown. Then he caught another pass, and then another pass, then nothing. I need a wide receiver and a flex between Jennings, Reed, and Garendo this week. Between the three of them, to Joe's point about the 49ers. I think it's a hard sell for me to roll out 2 49ers this week that aren't a quarterback and a wide receiver combination. So in your situation, Miami is sometimes an enigma on defense. If Tua is able to throw the ball a lot and be successful through the air, there's a very real possibility that Garendo could be scripted out of usage. So he might not eclipse that 15 carries or 17 total touches mark. Jennings, I think, is still going to have the volume regardless. I think he's still going to have 7 to 9 targets. Purdy's going to have to throw the ball a decent amount to keep pace in this game, I feel. So I'm on Jennings out of those 3. But at the same point in time, while I just said I don't really want to start 2 49ers, I can't get myself over.
You are way too emotionally invested in Reed. You're a scoring lover, and you are sad.
I can't get, and this is my primary concern for this game, guys, and this is a Tuesday lean, but it's a reasonable lean. Packers are 13.5-point favorites.
They should be 5. You'll see it scrolling around here, guys.
They have Josh Jacobs, the immortal one, who is just getting touchdowns. And last week, he basically wasn't utilized properly in the second half, and they still didn't use Jayden Reed in the capacity that they could use Jayden Reed in. So my primary concern for Jayden Reed isn't that he is not a phenomenal player, because he's explosive and a very good player. It's not that this matchup doesn't look at Jayden Reed to be successful. I'm looking at this 13.5 in line, and I'm thinking that without looking at the totals, Joe, I'm thinking that the Packers at a 13.5-point line, they're probably a 28-point implied total for their total team score, if not a little bit more.
So their implied total on that is 27.5.
Great.
But that's not what we have. We have Green Bay putting up the Green Bay score being 25-20, much tighter.
So if it's a tight game, maybe you see a little bit more of Jayden Reed. For everything that I said, I can't trust Reed, but I think he is a really good play, but I just can't trust him enough to say that I would want to start him in that capacity.
I don't want to start 2 Niners. I have to start Reed.
Right. Also, do I bench Tua for Richardson?
Yes.
Yeah, in that matchup, I would. Tua, here's the thing, though. They're a 1.5-point favorite. Tua, in order for Miami to be successful, we have seen that they're going to have to throw the ball 28 to 35 times. I'll look this up as we go through the questions as well in terms of the totals for these quarterbacks. I'd still kind of lean Tua because Anthony Richardson. But here's the thing about Anthony Richardson. Maybe he runs it in for the touchdown. So you get that kind of bonus baseball there, like a Kyler Murray kind of thing. But in order for him to get to hit like a 20-point mark, Anthony Richardson is going to have to throw for 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, and run one in. And he's not capable of doing that. Tua can hit 3 touchdowns. So that's my primary concern, is that Richardson's floor is the same as Tua's with not as high of a ceiling. So my lean is Tua, even though Richardson has the better matchup. I just get a little bit concerned when we take an inferior.
At some point, playing quarterback matters to playing quarterback. It's crazy.
It's kind of crazy. We see all the questions in the chat, guys. Sorry, we're taking a little bit longer with some of the quick hits here. I apologize. I've gotten out of my form a little bit.
You have, but he's already in Christmas mode. He's got his lights going up there. We talked about our Christmas schedule for what we're doing, which, by the way, guys, for Christmas and New Year's week, you're getting us on Mondays, and that's the only day we can guarantee you're getting us on Christmas and New Year's week. You might get us the Thursday on New Year's, but we're not totally sure about that yet. Just a programming note.
So Jane Daniels over Kyler, Richardson, Stroud, Stafford on waivers right now. So, we talked about this with KJ last week, or at least, last week when he was coming across. Maybe it was yesterday, or no, it was last week, talking about Winston versus Hurts. You don't want to get too cute with this quarterback discussion if you have a pedigreed player like Jane Daniels. Even though it's going to be a tough matchup, it is going to be a matchup where he's going to have to put a lot of effort into this game for them to be winning this game. If Washington wins this game, and looking at the score, Joe, or looking at the lines, 3.5. So this game's, like you said, is probably going to be something like 24-21 in that same kind of capacity as last game. If they're going to be successful, this ball is going to move through Jayden Daniels. You could very easily walk yourself into a situation where Jayden Daniels hits that 225, 2 touchdowns, and maybe another touchdown somewhere along in there. If Washington wants to win this game, he needs to hit 3 touchdowns. Stafford, on the other hand, is facing a New York defense that Mac Jones picked apart here, guys. Mac Jones got over 20 points in DFS this
Hey, Bob, was it Mac Jones that did it?
Over 20 points, guys. So
you said Mac Jones like 40 times.
While,
no one's ever said that.
While Kyron is still a volume-centric play in this matchup, and Kyron could go off for 20 carries, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns, I think that my nature here is to say that the chance for Stafford and for Jane Daniels to put up 3 total touchdowns is not out of the realm of possibility this week. I don't trust any of the other 3 quarterbacks to put up plus 3 touchdowns this week. So if I were to lean on any of those 2 quarterbacks, I'd lean Daniels and Stafford. I'd more likely lean Daniels because he does have the chance to get the rushing touchdown, whereas Stafford does not. So that's kind of where I'm at on there. Those are the 2 guys that I'd play with. Would you play McMillan over MHJ? Bones, I don't want to talk up Jade McMillan too much. You guys know what happens when I talk up a player too much. So I'm just going to say yes.
Yeah. More importantly, you shouldn't be playing MHJ.
Austin, start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 1 flex. Gibbs, Rip to Monty. That sucks. Garendo, Sharp, Rashad White, BTJ, Nico, Tyreek, Jennings, JSN, Jameson, Williams. So, the first player I want to touch on, Joe, just very quickly for Austin here, and we can circle back to this on Wednesday as well, would be JSN. The thing that I'm worried about with JSN is who's the quarterback going to be, because news yesterday says that the thing with Geno isn't that bad. We'll need to monitor that, because if JSN is capable of getting 7 to 11 targets a game, he is going to be highly valuable. Without even looking at the matchup, guys, this is the Tuesday lean, not even going too much deeper into the lineups. JSN is a good enough play if Geno plays this week.
Yeah, it's all Geno dependent though.
If I think that Sam Howell is a good enough quarterback for a spot start here or there for JSN. Nope. But I would much rather have Geno in than Sam Howell. If Geno is out, I think JSN is a more difficult start there. The reason JSN, I'm leaning him, Keenan Allen was very successful against this zone coverage, guys. The Vikings run zone coverage at a really high rate, and slot wide receivers or receivers that, work underneath a lot tend to be a little bit more successful in this zone against zone opponents. JSN could easily go off for 10 for 70 and a touchdown. Okay. So he's my first starting point that I really, really like this week. Then going to the other guys there, again, looking at the coverages, San Francisco, looking at the 2 high versus single high, they're not going to let Tyreek get over top of them. So Tyreek's work is going to be, it's going to be very interesting if Waddle can't go in this match.
What is the likelihood Waddle does go?
I haven't seen it yet. So I don't think I can trust him. And as so far as that,
it's Tuesday. That's fine.
As so far as that is true, I could definitely trust Nico, guys. So I think where I'm at in terms of the wide receiver market and even the flex market for you, Austin, this week is BTJ, Nico, and Jennings. And this is not just recency bias with BTJ. This is also taking into account this matchup versus the Raiders. Okay. The Raiders aren't as bad on defense as some fantasy players want to make them out to be. But BTJ is also very good. And Las Vegas is going to give the ball up a lot. They don't have a running game here. They don't have a consistent running game. They don't have a quarterback that's capable of getting long drives. So unless it's garbage time, you can't rely on any of that to happen. And Mac Jones just showed us, while he's not a great quarterback, and while the matchup isn't as, great for Jacksonville here, I could it's slightly better for, looking at and saying, well, it's not as good for players that play out wide, but BTJ is one of those players that I feel rises above the matchup in this scenario. So I'd be willing to hook my boat into BTJ, Nico, and JSN. I could find a way to pivot into Jennings as well. In terms of your running backs, I would be very interested this week in Gibbs. Absolutely, unequivocally, he's starting in my lineup. As it goes to the other guys, if Gino's not playing, I can't trust Sharps. If Gino's not playing, I can't trust Sharps. So then I'd probably pivot into Rashad White. Despite the fumble last week, he had really good usage. This week's matchup is going to be actually a really good enough matchup for them, depending on how they use their running backs. We'll have to look at the numbers a little bit more. But the initial Tuesday lean here is Gibbs, White, BTJ, Nico, and JSN. Played Bowers over Jonnu. Rough.
I don't know about that.
I've literally talked. No. He played it this past week. Literally talked Jonnu up all week, but yet didn't have the guts to start him over Bowers in one of my leagues. Sometimes all it takes, I mean, the gut feeling is, some people had gut feelings about Jennings this week. The gut was right. The volume was there. It's just it didn't happen. Sometimes the gut and the stats back it up. Both these players were supposed to have good enough games, but you can't trust Desmond Ridder, guys. No. I don't know how much I can say this. The Desmond Ridder is, outside of Drake London, is untrustworthy. It's untrustworthy. We have watched a full year of Desmond Ridder like on paper now, and it's just crazy. With that being said, Jonnu or Bowers, if ASC plays, I'm not starting him. If Ridder plays, honestly, yeah, it's absolutely unequivocally correct. And, even taking that into perspective here, I still, even though the adjusted values, point values for Jonnu in this matchup aren't great. And Joe, did you look up Waddle here, if Waddle was healthy or not?
I've got a clear answer on that yet.
So we looked at this last week in terms of pass attempts per game. And what I said about Miami is true. And, we talked about Stafford versus this 49ers defense last week. And the 49ers last week, I'm going to pull it back up again for us, Austin, as we go through all of our questions here. The 49ers are sitting here giving up only approximately 29 and a half passes a game. Last week, they gave up 27 pass attempts. So, against Miami, if Tua goes under his 32 attempts per game kind of perspective, it could be a rough game for them. As I said a little bit earlier, but Jonnu is, if Waddle's out, Jonnu's a smash.
Well, he's listed as day-to-day, but it's unclear about what side it's going to land on.
If Waddle's out, Jonnu's a smash. Jose, Murray, Jacobs, Gibbs, Evans, London, and Njoku. Love all of that so far. Higgins, Fairbairn, Colts defense. Bench, Charbonnet, McCormick, Brian Robinson, Tyreek, Neighbors, Washington, D. Start, sit, and any waiver moves, half PPR. Thanks. Jose, I see you there. You're thinking about moving McCormick off your team for Ford and the Washington D for Strange. I think that's a really smart decision.
I'm okay with that.
I really think that moving off McCormick right now and into Ford or Washington D for the Strange is smart. Right now, it's fantasy playoffs. We can't be stubborn. We can't think that McCormick is going to have that legacy game or something of that nature. If he's not performing, and Madison came back too, so that really pivots there. Seems to has lost a little bit of value with Abdullah and Hurt. He's gone. You can't keep him. He's gone. So I like where you're sitting. I like where your head's at here. I'm very curious, Jose, to be honest with you, what other quarterbacks you have on the waiver wire, because I can't trust Kyler Murray right now, as I said earlier in the episode. Jacobs and Gibbs is enough to counteract Kyler Murray, though. But I think in order to win your playoff game this week, your quarterback's going to need to score 20, and I'm not sure I see a pathway for Murray to do that. In terms of the tight end, definitely go out and get a tight end to pivot onto. Maybe Muth, if he's available, is a nice pivot onto. A guy maybe that's under the radar in terms of tight ends. Your Austin Hoopers, your Hunter Henrys potentially going out there and getting one of those guys in case Njoku can't go. That's what I would do. I would also, I like the Higgins start, to be honest with you. I do over Brian Robinson. Philly has a really strong run defense. I'm not in on Tyreek. I think your lineup's solid as it is. And I think that Joe would mostly agree with that because you're benching the wide receivers that are having some volume issues and such like that. Jose, I like where you're at. I think your moves are smart. But I would also try to pivot onto another quarterback. because you don't, Washington D for Strange is smart. If you drop McCormick for Ford, you don't really need him with Gibbs or Jacobs. I could see holding them away from somebody. I might want to look into a quarterback there. Austin, I have Gibbs and Monty, and I'm keeping Monty on the team for the chemistry. Had to change my team name because it was Segable. Austin, I love this. Every time I have a rash of injuries, I always name my team Trauma Ward. I mean, I named it this year. Our friend Steve, who's going to be in the championship game in our 18 PPR or our 18 IDP PPR auction league, beat me.
More abbreviations than that, Bob.
Beat me because I was stubborn enough to start Cooper Cup this week over some other guys, and he's going to be in the championship game. His team is still named Trauma War because he has like 7 guys still with IR designations on his team. It's so frustrating.
He does.
Jackson, seriously.
He also was unwilling to cut at him. It's kind of on him.
Seriously debating starting Anthony Richardson this week over Stroud or Love. I'm playing the number 1 team in the semifinals. He's projected 35 points more than me. Needs some miracles thoughts. I don't think it's a bad decision. We talked earlier, Jackson, about why I don't like Richardson over some guys. And the metrics are strong enough to suggest that that it's not a really good move to be walking into wanting to start Anthony Richardson this week. But I will say, with the amount of pass attempts that Love has been throwing, it worries me that, like I said, with starting a guy like Reed, there could be a point in time in this game where they don't have to throw the ball. I mean, They just won't. His pass attempts are sitting at like 23 pass attempts or something like that per game. And that's not something, unless you can be like a Jared Goff with like 3 touchdowns, hyper efficient, doing all this stuff. It's just not something that I want to hinge my bet on, because that provides you with a really low floor of approximately like 15, 14-ish points. I just can't get into that right now. And I'm just not there. I'm just not there where other people are at with even though I love Jordan Love. He's the 3 teams that are passing it the least in the league: Philly, Green Bay, Steelers.
Yep.
Okay. Coming back up, looking at where Houston is. Houston is at least 10th overall with 33 pass attempts a game. And then you have, Indy somewhere in there at 30. You could see a pathway where Anthony Richardson has a better chance to go off. But again, Tennessee is also letting up some of the least pass attempts because their rush defense is bad. That bodes well for Richardson, though, because he is more likely to run the ball. So I would start Richardson over these 2 guys. I would. I'm not confident in it, but I would do it because he gives you the best upside out of the 3.
And that's fair. Stroud doesn't trust his line anymore.
So Adams and CDR locks. Now I need to start to DJ Moore, Harrison, Tracy. I'll throw in Pittman and Amari so you guys can laugh. Jason,
appreciate that. It's always happy to laugh.
Jason, it's DJ Moore. DJ Moore is the first out of that group that I'd start. Last time they played the Lions, Caleb Williams was able to throw. The Lions have lost tons of pieces. They're not going, they lost Montgomery. They lost the defensive tackle. The pressure is going to be a lot different. I think this is a really good game to play Bears wide receivers in, outside of maybe Odunze. But we saw what they performed like and I think the volume is going to be there for DJ Moore. And I agree with you with Harrison. If he gets the same matchup as CD this week, it makes sense. But I believe that outside of that, I would be on McMillan. But if you trust Harrison more than McMillan, there's nothing pointing you against Harrison other than volume and touchdown concerns. Joe, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of concerns on Harrison, but I think McMillan is a better option than Harrison, and I definitely haven't been on Thielen for a while, so that's how I'm going to go with there. I want the upside of McMillan. We said this back at the beginning of the year, and it happened a couple of weeks later than I thought it was going to, but it's certainly happening now. McMillan's stepping up to be the future of that team. Godwin is not coming back to Tampa. He's a free agent. McMillan has taken his place. That's what he was drafted to do, and he's doing it. I think this is a great preview of what he is. It's amazing that we have the same conversation. He's ahead of Harrison, but again, I don't know how many different ways to say Kyler Murray's the problem in that equation. And Baker isn't. So give me McMillan.
Yeah. So I'm definitely on DJ Moore and McMillan. And I think that on Tuesday, I don't think my lean would change throughout the week on that one, Jason, either. We can look into the stats a little bit better tomorrow and Thursday. But I don't think my lean would change on that at all. Top 5. Who should I drop? Amari or Debo for Dobbs, Worthy, or Bateman? I think you should drop both. And I would pick up Dobbs.
Yeah.
And probably Worthy. I'm not worried about Carson Wentz. I'm really not. If Carson Wentz has to play a couple games, I think that Andy Reid will want Carson Wentz to pepper Worthy with targets to get him ready for his first playoff run. I really do think that that's what's going to happen because Hopkins, has been there.
Hopkins also has that snap count concern. The other thing is if you're Reid right now, you're actually in a pretty decent spot to get Wentz ready. You got 2 games up on the conference. You have a defense who's proven that they can win tight games. In fact, your whole team's been proven that they can win low-scoring tight games. It's probably Pacheco, and you're right. It probably is going to Worthy, but it's definitely going to be a more conservative game plan, which is why I kind of want to keep Debo. I get that everyone in the world, I saw every washed meme in the world that came out, guys. Like Debo, I kept telling Debo was going to be a top 10 receiver this year.
Memes are
and
so
I am
good.
Getting it sent to me. It didn't pan out, but I still have faith in the guy. Definitely more than Bateman. Maybe more than Worthy, but 100% get rid of Amari Cooper. Definitely do that for Dobbs. That part shouldn't even be consideration.
Right. Austin, you're right, man. You start the stud. You start the stud and you just keep it rolling. Sorry, Jesse and RC and Austin, I'm going to go back up in the chat. I forgot. I clicked too far past because I got Jose's question twice here. So, Jesse, Bills or Broncos defense this week. Jesse, as it goes, where I stand on that one, I'm a little bit concerned about the Patrick Surtain injury. I would monitor that. They said yesterday that he'd be ready to go for that game. The Broncos are such a good defense at causing turnovers. Right now the Chargers are struggling to produce valuable offense outside of Ladd McConkey. I don't think they can afford taking a conservative approach, but the Chargers are a 3-point favorite here, which is kind of weird. I think this is a nice spot for the Broncos as a get right spot with Bo Nix. And they're fighting for their playoff lives. And I do think
spot.
What'd you say?
It's a get wrong spot. No, they basically clinched the playoffs with that win over Indy, though.
They basically clinched, but I think that the Broncos are. I think the Broncos, in my opinion, are a more trustworthy team to produce turnovers and to produce valuable turnovers to your team. And I think that they could do that against Herbert and Vidal and the running backs that they have there. The Bills are a great play. Despite them producing like negative 15 points over the last 2 weeks, the matchup's a smash. It really is.
And I get how contradictory that sounds, despite the fact that they sucked the last 2 weeks. But he's not wrong. The maths.
It does, guys. I mean, like you look at how many pass attempts, and I'm going to look it up right now. Opponent pass attempts per game. We're going to look up just pass attempts per game for these teams.
And while he's doing that, I do want to point this out because there is a notion of like, what difference does it make when you say the defense is letting up this many attempts? And what it really is it's the defense forces the offense into these positions, whether it be by the way the game script has gone, what the defense is showing that you can take. These are real tendencies that matter. And they're easily something that you can think of, it doesn't matter what the defense allows. A good offense will do what they want. Not really. Most offenses in the NFL, unless they're in a spot where they're forcing it to someone in the leaky wheel situation, like
Squeaky
AJ
wheel.
Brown, they basically do what they want. So they do what the defense gives them rather than anything else because it's the easiest pathway to victory.
Okay,
so
I'm
going
to lay this out there, Jesse, and this is why the Bills are a good defense to play this week. Tell me the last time Drake May hasn't thrown an interception.
10 minutes ago.
That would be October 27th.
He's always
in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. He has thrown an interception in every single game. And by the way, Ramondre Stevenson isn't the most trustworthy with the ball either. So despite the terribleness that they've been on, they've faced 2 really good offenses. So you can't fault them necessarily for producing terribly in that manner. But you can walk yourself into that made sense. But the Broncos overall, for me, I think they're a better play, but I can't get over the fact that Drake May, it's almost a guaranteed interception. Okay. What they do with it, who knows? But it's literally a guaranteed interception. And Justin Herbert on the season has only thrown 2. So even though Denver's really good at causing turnovers, that doesn't mean that they're going to get them. Consider that. Okay. There's all that to consider. So I'd be on the Bills. And Austin, for your question, it's the same thing. Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, doesn't matter. The only problem that you might have with the Packers is I think the Packers and Bills are likely to keep the implied point totals for their opponents down. I really do. But there is a very real chance that this defense doesn't see the field because they'll just keep running it with Jacobs or Wilson or Brooks or whoever else they trot out at running back, and it will just be a continuous stream of runners and then 3 and out, 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 3 and out for New Orleans. So
that sounds right.
So I love the Packers this week. Don't get me wrong. My initial Tuesday lean is Packers, but everything Joe has said about the Bills, everything, it matches, right? I don't think you could go wrong with either one of those plays this week. Drake May can at least move the ball. So maybe there are some sustained drives that lead to more time being taken off the clock. I don't know. Maybe. RCA, do I drop the Jets defense for either the Chiefs or the Cardinals? Yes. And yes. I think you could do it for either of them, to be honest with you. You can go on, you can do this experiment for whatever defense you really want. Just go in.
I'd rather have the Chiefs, just outright. I'd rather have the Chiefs because they're going to get sacks against Houston this week.
Go on Fantasy Pros. Take a look at, what these defenses are capable of, which defenses are getting a lot of sacks, which defenses are capable of getting a lot of sacks. Sacks are great because they potentially lead to fumbles and turnovers.
Sure do.
Looking at interceptions, teams that have high implied passing totals with quarterbacks that are more likely to throw an interception like Winston was this past week, it was very easy to predict that the Chiefs were going to get interception attempts because there was going to be more opportunities for them to intercept the ball. You look at it, Stroud isn't the most efficient passer right now. Just in terms of like Houston in general, that's one of those matchups. 9 interceptions on the year. The Chiefs can take advantage of that. Granted, the Chiefs aren't the best defense out there, but they can take advantage of that. They're a smartly coached team, so that makes sense. And then for the other defense here, the Cardinals, I just want to pull up the Cardinals real fast. The Cardinals are kind of like middle of the road in terms of, interceptions, fumbles recovered and things like that. And they're around middle of the road too, in terms of sacks. The matchup is good that it could dictate that maybe that happens a little bit more. But again, if they lean on Connor, they're not going to have that many opportunities to produce that. So while their implied point total for the opposite team will be lower, there's not going to be as many boom opportunities to get those sacks and interceptions. I'd be on the Chiefs. And I think it's a pretty easy decision to be on the Chiefs this week against Houston. So going back up here, top 5, I really like in this game. I really like Rachaad White over Tracy and over Najee. Najee's matchup, Najee's a plotter, okay? And for the same reasoning that I said about Josh Jacobs, if the Steelers want to win this game, they're going to have to move the ball fairly efficiently, yet slowly down the field. So I understand that it's not the best matchup for running backs here. But I also think that Najee's not as bad of a play this week as some people might want to suggest to you. Because when we talk about coaching, when we talk about game script management, when we talk about all these things, the Steelers are going to have to do that in order to manage Lamar Jackson being on the field. Correct me if I'm incorrect about that, Joe. You can't have Lamar Jackson throwing 37 times like they allow Jameis Winston or another quarterback to do.
No, you don't want to be doing that.
So,
no.
I mean, I just can't see a pathway where they stop using the running game in this matchup. The Steelers have the second highest amount of rushing attempts, only to Philadelphia. Baltimore is tied.
And when they play Baltimore, they always play slogfest. Quite frankly, without Pickens, they have to do that. I mean, it might be ugly. It might be 25 carries for 80 yards, but that's what the Steelers are going to do. It's what they do.
I just see, like, you know, when they played, like, so for example, this past week, they didn't keep Jalen Hurts off the field enough.
No.
And that was a disappointment because that they needed to win that game. They didn't keep him off the field enough. They allowed them to pass the ball, so they didn't even have to run the ball because they were just beating them all the time. I really do think that Mike Tomlin will adjust and Najee will have a good enough game, but my lean today would be Rachaad White, but I'm not totally off Najee.
On Hard Knocks.
I'm not off Najee, though. Charbonnet, if Walker sits, or Garendo in PPR. It's Garendo for me.
It's Charbonnet regardless.
It's Garendo for me over. If this really doesn't depend so much on if Walker sits, this depends on if Geno sits.
Yeah, it does. Let's pull an update on that.
If Geno and Walker sit, you can't start Charbonnet. It's untrustworthy. I'm not there, and I'd be on Garendo pretty easily. Z, we appreciate it. Thielen or Jameson Williams this week in the Colts defense or the Bengals defense. At the top of the hour, if you were here, I know you submitted your question around 4:18, so you were here earlier on when we were talking about the Bengals defense. Joe doesn't trust the Bengals defense, and that's fair. It really is fair. But regardless of quarterback situation, whether it's Jameis Winston or DTR, I'd be a little bit hesitant with the Bengals against Winston. But with DTR, hold on 1 minute.
All right, I'm going to give a quick Seattle update on Geno from what I just pulled up here. Geno is in a spot where nothing structurally was damaged, and he might even be able to practice this week. So Geno's a go.
So Charbonnet could be a go too. I like the opportunities that the Bengals could have in this game to produce turnovers. They're an offense that moves the ball down the field pretty quickly, and so the defense sees the field a lot. And if they're seeing an offense that's not capable of producing on the ground, that's not capable of producing through the air, and whose offensive line might not be as great as others in the league, I think this is a really great spot for the Bengals, regardless of the quarterback situation. Granted, if Winston's in the implied point total, they'll get dropped, right? They won't get any points from the implied point total. But if Winston's in, they have a better chance at interceptions as well. I like the Bengals over the Colts, to be honest with you, Z. And then in terms of the wide receiver market, I'm not starting Jameson Williams over Thielen. I mean, Jameson Williams is tied to a team that is so proficient at scoring that he's also, if he's getting a floor amount of targets, Just going back to a game that was a little bit.
JMO, so you got to go JMO. He's part of their offense. Thielman's getting phased out just as a starting point.
Yeah, I mean, you looking at last week's matchup, just as you can go in and look at the last 3 weeks if you wanted to. Amon-Ra dominated 14 receptions. And the Lions threw the ball a boatload, 59 attempts. Jameson Williams was out there and got 5 targets in that game. So granted, not something that you want to see with Tim Patrick getting 8 over Williams's 5, but also, everybody 8. And, I am a little bit concerned about the emergence of Tim Patrick, but again, JMO is their deep ball guy. And, when you look at the schedule, and we can look at this tomorrow as well, the Bears are a team that they can be beaten through the air if given the opportunities to. It wasn't like a banger of a game for the Lions the last time they met. A lot of injuries in that game. Caleb Williams moved the ball really well in the second half of that game. But Jameson Williams had 7 targets in that game. Yeah. So I am willing to invest in JMO there.
I mean, anything north of 5 is a giant win for JMO.
We buy homes. This is a tough go.
Well, by the way, welcome, We Buy Homes. I think this is our first time seeing you in the comments. Welcome.
It's good that you have both Hurts and Jane Daniels. That means you drafted Hurts in the 3rd or 4th round. You got Jane Daniels in the 9th or 10th round.
Or he traded good.
So more power to you. I'm on Hurts. I think that Hurts over Daniel, both are probably going to have really good games logistically, guys. I think that both of these quarterbacks have a chance to get 2 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. But it is more likely that Jalen Hurts gets a rushing touchdown. So his floor is a little bit safer than Jade Daniels' floor. So I'm on Hurts there. Recon, welcome. I have Allen, Saquon, Chase, Hills, Zay, Laporta, Tracy, and Chargers defense. Love that for you. Josh Allen saved my life 2 weeks in a row, most likely. On to the next round. Do I start Tracy or Keon if Pickens is out? Also, Lions, Raiders, or Chargers defenses. So I'm not on the Lions defense this week. You could easily talk me. I do like the Chargers defense as an overall defense. But Joe will tell you that they.
But you love Bo too much to say pick the Chargers defense.
They are good I think they're a good enough play this week. We just saw Bo get intercepted 3 times this past week, so starting to show some chinks in the armor. I would. While I don't want to be too sneaky about it, I probably would start the Chargers.
Yeah. Of those 3, yeah.
If I'm listing the 3 in order of the way that I would start them, Recon, it'd be the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Lions. Because I don't think the Raiders are as bad as some teams are making them out to be. They're bad.
I don't know about that, dude.
They're bad, but, pumping the brakes on that. But I'm on the Chargers.
And then back to answer your previous question, I'm definitely going Keon Coleman over Tracy.
That's where I was going to. I like the opportunity. Again, this goes back to the mentality, Recon, of young guys getting playing time towards the end of the year over those older guys that already have themselves in a headspace. Again, but Keon Coleman is one of those guys that's not a floor play. Tracy is a floor play. He's going to get you 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points in PPR leagues. Keon Coleman is not guaranteed a target.
No, he's not.
I'm going to say it again. Keon Coleman is not guaranteed a target in that game. However, and we'll look at it as we go through the course of the week, Wednesday and Thursday as well. If the matchup dictates that they're going to have to move the ball and the matchup says that the ADOT is a little bit higher, Buffalo won't have a problem in this game. Okay. I think Keon Coleman is a better play in this matchup.
And love the fact you guys are doing the deep dives and quick hit systems. You guys are the best.
We're going to catch up on these quick hits first before we hit these deep dives.
We got our first deep dive right now, so I'm excited we finally got to it.
What did you say?
So we finally got to it. We're only half an hour behind.
What if Gino plays? Do I still bench JSN? No.
Gino is playing. Do not bench JSN.
If Gino's playing, we play JSN. Zai, good to see that you're still in these playoffs. Assuming Kamara's out, I need a flex. Half PPR, Reed, Worthy, McMillan, Akine, Algier, and Strange. I like McMillan. As I said earlier in the episode, I think McMillan is a great play. My initial lane is McMillan on Tuesday, but I really am keeping my head on a swivel about Worthy or Strange. While I don't trust Strange completely, I am intrigued, and this is diametrically opposed to Westbrook Akine. I am intrigued at the significant amount of targets that he has gotten since Ingram has gone
and that's
down.
consistent to their offense because Ingram led the league in targets last year. They throw the ball to their tight end quite intentionally. So you can make the argument for volume that it would be volume-wise, McMillan, Strange, and Reed would be the direction you'd want to go with this one. Explosion-wise being Worthy and Akine.
Well, no, so that's where I'm going at with this.
So I'm going McMillan, though, or Reed.
So for your decision, Zai, it is so much more, infinitely more important that your wide receivers are capable of getting a touchdown. Okay. So what I'm looking at it, since it's not PPR, since the volume, while the volume is nice, points are points, right? Brenton Strange here, if you go into, what was last week. So he had 7 points, 11 receptions. So that's 5.5. So he's sitting around like 13.5 points because he didn't get the touchdown. If he has the capability to get a touchdown, that'd be nice. Worthy, on the other hand, similar kind of feel to the market with touchdown upside. So in the order that I have it, I'd be on McMillan, Worthy, Strange, or McMillan, Worthy, Reed, and then Strange, because those first 3 have touchdown upside. But it would probably be flipped if this were PPR. It'd probably be flipped if it were PPR, but not so much flipped for McMillan. It would just be Strange. It would be McMillan, Strange, Worthy, then Reed. That's how that flip would happen. Top 5, pick one defense: Colts, Lions, Lions, and Bengals. Top 5. You've been here for the chat. You've heard what we said about this. Bills. Then for me, Bengals. For Joe, probably the Colts. Lions dead last. But we're both on the Bills over those other guys.
Definitely.
And Austin, to the earlier quick hit, we got to this one. It's Bills. Jonathan, Ladd and Terry McLaurin's matchups scare me, but I need to start 3 between them and Keenan Allen, Jennings, Ridley, full PPR. Okay. Keenan Allen is a play this week, guys. He was in play this week. He was in play the week before. He's continuing to be in play. Again, he's very much tied to Caleb Williams' passes attempts. As long as Caleb Williams hits that 30 mark, Keenan Allen will be fine. Okay. I think he's going to hit that 30 mark this week against a team that just lost David Montgomery. They do have Gibbs, but they're, when Gibbs comes in, his usage goes up. But how will they want to use him knowing that they really have nobody behind him for the playoff run? Usually they're out of the playoffs, right? So what are they going to do in this scenario? Dan Campbell's not dumb. And, he's competitive, but also he understands that he's competitive for a reason. They made the playoffs. Best season in Detroit history so far. Pump the brakes, Dan. I know you don't want to, but you're probably going to pump the brakes just a little bit more than you might usually do after seeing a rash of all your stars getting hurt over the last several weeks. So I am on.
Nothing about him pumps the brakes, though. Ever.
I get it. I understand. I'm on Keenan Allen. I also can't pass up Terry McLaurin and the usage. While it's an incredibly terrible matchup, and the last time Terry McLaurin trotted out versus Philly, he straight up stunk it up. Okay? Stunk it up. Quinion Mitchell was on top of him the entire game. So if you are concerned about that and you are willing to lose out on that Terry McLaurin touchdown upside, the pivot is Jennings. Okay. Ridley can easily be walked back into that with Mason Rudolph, but I still think it's Jennings. So if you want to pivot off Terry, it's to Jennings, and I'm still starting Keenan Allen and Ladd. But if you are willing to trust the process with Terry McLaurin and you're not nervous about that shakedown that he got from Quinion Mitchell on Thursday night, you have to go Terry. Right? So Jonathan, try to pick up McMillan. Love McMillan. I think it's a great pickup this week. I think it was a good pickup last week and the week before too. If Pickens is out again, pick ones. Downs, McMillan, Dobbs are worthy. In your scenario, I'm on Dobbs.
Too.
While I love McMillan a lot, it is very, very clear that although the Packers are not passing it at a high rate, the guy they trust the most is Dobbs. Dobbs is the touchdown market. Dobbs is who they use when it matters. We saw that this week. We continue to see it when he's healthy. It's Dobbs for me, followed by McMillan, Worthy, and Downs in the last spot. Bones, do I drop Kyler? I think about it. If I can get Stafford, I drop Kyler. But again, Bones, the stats dictate, and you can go back. You can do your own going through the stats with Kyler. When Kyler has had his best games, he's had a rushing touchdown. So do you think there is the upside for a rushing touchdown this week? I don't. So you're looking at a marketable quarterback that has a floor of 0 touchdowns. That's 0. Z-E-R-O. 0 touchdowns for a quarterback.
I love how you keep getting redundant today. This is great.
I'm telling you because I walked into it this week in my matchup. I had Kyler and Bo in smash spots, and they disappointed, and I lost because of it. I could have overcome the Cooper Kupp 0 if Bo Nix and Kyler would have gotten 15, 20 points, but they didn't.
Nope.
They didn't. So are you willing to trust Kyler again, Bones? That's the question. If you're willing to trust Kyler again, roll with him. If you're not, don't. Josh,
what? The answer is just don't.
I was thinking about your team last night too, Josh. I was thinking about a lot of teams last night. We got that question in there with Hurts. Sorry, we got to it a little bit later than usual. Start one, PPR, Reed, Shakir, Pollard, Tracy, Waiver, McMillan, Miller, Bigsby, Tillman, Coker. That's a nice waiver to be on there. As I said earlier about the passing game here for Buffalo, it's very well could be that they turn a little bit more to the younger guys, turn a little bit more to less volume. Here's the thing with Shakir. Shakir is again getting volume. He's got a touchdown, but it's the yardage problem for Shakir, right? If you're willing to stick out that 6 for 39 and a touchdown, you could easily get that same thing out of Reed. You could easily get that same thing out of McMillan. McMillan has a really good matchup. He's going to be in the game. He's young. He's going to see a lot of playing time. So I would be on watch. As I said, I'm on McMillan. He's going to suck. It's going to happen. I'm sorry for everybody for McMillan this week. He's going to suck because I said it so many times. But I'm on McMillan.
I don't like this negativity, Bob.
But I also like Pollard. We've said it again and again and again. I was interested to see the usage of Tajay Spears in the passing game, but Pollard has a pretty good stranglehold of the rushing game, guys. And he's facing a defense that's not very good. But again, how is Tennessee going to move the ball? Pollard was great in the first quarter of that game, and then all of a sudden,
we got pulled. He was hurt.
Yeah, right. So,
Pollard all comes down to his health. If Pollard plays, he's fine. If he gets pulled, if he doesn't play, obviously you need to go McMillan.
I'm on McMillan, Pollard, Shakir. Those are the 3 guys that I'm targeting this week. I'd be okay starting any of the 3, assuming all health is the same. I would lean Pollard over McMillan because of the volume. But I think that McMillan has a really good touchdown upside right now. Z, for context, I had the bye locked up last week of the season, but Jane Daniels was on bye. League would have complained if I didn't add a QB that week, even though the playoffs were set. I dropped the Green Bay defense for the QB, and then Carr got hurt, and now my opponent has Green Bay defense. Watch Green Bay defense kill it Monday night. Z, I think that they can, but as I said earlier in the episode, Joe, they might not be on the field as much as people think.
But that equals no points scored, though.
Yeah, but that's only 5 points in some leagues.
It all depends. Yeah, it all depends on your structure.
Right.
Some people get crazy.
Josh, start Broncos or Chargers defense this week. Again, Chargers are a reasonable start.
Yes, they
Broncos are too. Bo Nix has thrown more interceptions than Justin Herbert this year. I think you can easily walk into an equation where even if Surtain is playing, that the Chargers aren't passing the ball enough to warrant any concern there. So I think I might lean Chargers over Broncos, which goes against my mentality with the Broncos that I've been saying all year. But the facts are there, right? The facts
Chargers
are
good and Bo Nix is bad. You're finally starting to learn this.
You're welcome, Bones. You're welcome, Z. Defensive options are Bengals, Colts, and Raiders. In that order, I like Bengals, Colts, then Raiders. Joe might swing you the other way on the Colts. And that's only based upon the matchups there. IP here. We'll get to these deep dives. We'll deep dive that for sure. So, Tyler, we're finishing off the quick hits, and then we'll get up to the deep dives, guys. Would you grab McMillan? And for Pacheco, hasn't been Pacheco. Is Charbonnet droppable if Walker plays?
No,
but Pacheco is.
Yeah, Pacheco hasn't been Pacheco. That sums up very well.
Pacheco is droppable for McMillan. Again, watch McMillan go bad and Pacheco to whatever. But again,
although I gotta say, the new lineup with Mahomes out has to be Pacheco centric. It has to be.
It has to be. I agree with you. It has to be. So maybe if you're not starting McMillan, maybe you keep Pacheco on your roster. But I'm not dropping Sharps because he does still have a little bit of value, but it's limiting value. And if Walker goes down again and Geno's healthy, there's okay, not dropping Pacheco. All right, cool. I would grab McMillan though. I really wouldn't drop Sharps. Tyler, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. In a standard league, start three: Hall, Ford, Pollard, Rachaad White, Guerendo. So I could fall a couple of ways on this buy. The initial Tuesday lean for me probably falls with Rachaad White. They use their running backs really well in Tampa. And I do believe, this matchup is pretty good for these running backs. He could get scripted out by Bucky, but the usage is pretty fair that they give both these running backs. So my starting point is Rachaad White. My other point is if Pollard is healthy, Tennessee is going to use him. But again, what you need to worry about with Tony Pollard is if Tennessee goes down significantly, his touch volume goes down significantly. Yeah. So if Indy's going to go up like they did against the Broncos and then hold that lead, Pollard's not going to do well. Oh, I got you, Tyler. Pollard won't do well in that scenario. Ford probably will do well enough out of this grouping of players. And again, Breece Hall 1 week more removed from the injury. Didn't see a great usage last week with the 3 running back head that they had. And they could script Breece Hall out of this game pretty easily. Los Angeles can if they keep Kyron on the field a lot. I'd be on Ford and White. I know that's weird. I'd be on Ford and White, all things taken into consideration. And then I know you don't like Guerendo, but, maybe Breece, because I could see a pathway that Pollard gets scripted out. I could see a pathway that Breece gets scripted out. Maybe it's with White, Pollard, and Ford, and that sounds really gross, really weird. I don't really like it. But the stats dictate that, Cincinnati's not the best run defense, right?
No,
Indy's not the best run defense, and neither is Dallas. And all 3 of these teams use their running backs. Ford's carries are probably going to be a little bit less than all 5 of these guys. But what we saw last week with the Jets I
don't know. With Dorian Thompson, they're probably leaning more into the run. They're not going to do the Winston.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like Ford, Pollard, and White is a weird volume play. With a little bit of touchdown upside.
And what this question really shows is how far the Jets have fallen. I mean, this should have been Breece Hall, no questions asked, but it's not.
So Tyler, I'm saying, would you start Ford over Pacheco? Yeah, for everything that I just said, Tyler, is there some sneaky upside to Ford this week? Insofar as Chubb's out, they don't really have another running back on their roster to be trustworthy with. Thompson Robinson could steal a couple of carries in that capacity, but Cincinnati is not a great run defense team either. So when you kind of look at where those markets lie, as I'm looking at it, it's a neutral matchup. It's a really neutral matchup for Ford. And if he could get more carries, he does. He's shown it before, guys, that he could score touchdowns and he can break off decent enough chunks of yardage to be successful. I'd be on Ford over Pacheco. But to Joe's point earlier, to be aware that if Mahomes isn't playing, which is tracking that he's probably not, Wentz is not a bad quarterback. They don't necessarily have to lean on Pacheco in order to be successful. So, I could see a pathway for that, but I don't like it. I would pick up Ford. I would. I think that he's a sneaky flex this week. I really do. There might not be a lot of value in Ford, but I really do think that he has a good chance this week, Joe, to kind of not have a go-off game, but like a touchdown, 60 yards, and like 7 or 8 carries, something like that.
So that's fair. So why don't we do Will and Trone now that we finally have caught up on the quick hits, and then we'll do the deep dives.
Yeah, let's get to IPs first here.
Yeah,
IP,
you keep going out of order and mess with me.
IP, it's Bucky.
Yeah, that one was easy.
It's Bucky. Sutton has a good chance to get a touchdown, but it's Bucky. Bucky came back with the back injury, got the yardage, didn't get the touchdown, but he's there. He's back. We're ready. Will, I have Dalton Kincaid, but I'm going to pick up Brenton Strange. I think it's a good idea. If I get Strange, who should I start between Kincaid and Strange? Joe will tell you, and I told everybody yesterday, I chase tight end points like nobody's business. I also chase them in good matchups. Okay, so the optics are there. The reason I chase them
actually should be a favorite this week for the first time in forever.
The reason I chase tight end points in matchups that are highish implied kind of point totals is that there's an eventuality that there could be a back end touchdown. And what we have seen this year, Joe, and like I said, I haven't looked up the stats from this past week, but to be a top 10 tight end minimally in a given week, you need around 10 or 11 points.
Yeah.
And Dalton Kincaid's not getting you there. He's not. So
especially in a game when they're going to blow him out, they could easily shut down that passing attack. Will, you can make a decent argument for Strange.
I'm on Strange, especially if his implied target total is somewhere in that 6 to 7 market. If it's 6 to 7, he could easily get 30 to 40 yards. So you're looking at 9 to 10 points right there as a floor, walking into it as a floor, and he can do way better than that. Trone, nice. Same question here. Will and Trone, same question. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. With DTR now, it's QB for the Browns. How would you rank Njoku, Kincaid, and Strange? I think the implied target total for Njoku goes way down if DTR plays.
Mm-hmm. I have to see Cleveland with DTR in charge. This could easily be a disaster. I mean, it's easy. And they want it to be a disaster. I mean, let's be totally blunt. They want the first pick. I don't know why they want Deion Sanders' kid, but it makes so much sense for Cleveland to do that. So that's what they're trying to do.
I dislike Shador, man.
Me too. So much. And it's why it makes so much sense for Cleveland.
So much.
I'm probably going Strange and Njoku Kincaid. Maybe Strange Kincaid and Njoku. Either way, Strange is first. That's how I'm looking at that one, Trone. His volume is one of the few tight end positions in the league that you're getting volume to the tight end spot. That's what makes the Arizona tight end so appealing. He's getting volume. That's what makes Bauer so appealing.
Okay.
Strange is there, and he's still their second best weapon. So let's see what happens.
Can I just share this? And before we get into the chat up top here, I'm starting DJ Moore. Will, I'm starting DJ Moore. Go back earlier in the episode for all the reasons why to start the Bears pass catchers this week. My running backs are HN, Pacheco, and Sharps. I like HN this week. I would think about Ford though. So if dropping Sharps moved me into Ford, if I knew that Walker was playing this week,
I can't do that.
I think there's a little bit more upside for Ford in that market.
I'm sticking with Sharps.
I feel that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. But before we get to the deep dives here, I just want to I just want to go into what I mentioned about Dorian Thompson-Robinson. In his best game, statistically, in his career, it was against the Steelers last year where they won 13-10. The battle of the shit. Dorian Thompson-Robinson versus Kenny Pickett. Dorian Thompson-Robinson had a completion percentage of 55%, a quarterback rating of 32.
It's like 4 picks.
The last time Dorian Thompson-Robinson played that game, the running backs, Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford, had a combined 24 carries. But here's an interesting note. David Njoku had 15 targets.
Well, when you're really checking it down.
They also had Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore at the same time. So maybe you start Njoku. Maybe the implied targets are good. But again, we're talking about volume plus good volume. Mac Jones provided Brenton Strange with good volume last week. He should be able to do that again this week. This is nothing. I'm not talking well about Mac Jones. I'm just saying.
Important to clarify.
I'm just saying, David Njoku, 7 catches, 56 yards on 15 targets with a Dorian Robinson-led Cleveland Browns. If you like that, if that's your kind of vibe, sure, do it. It's not my kind of vibe, though. I don't trust him at all. You're welcome, Weebuy. Let's get to your question here, and then we'll get up to the deep dives. One wide receiver, London, Smitty, Shakir, Jaden Reed, or Myers if AOC plays. So I fall on a couple. If I were talking purely DFS, the salary for Myers is so good this week that I think that he's a great play this week. Joe brought up a very valuable point about guys like Drake London, guys like Darnell Mooney and the ilk. Michael Pennis might be a good change of pace over Kirk Cousins for them.
I think he will be. But they're not going to put him in until they're out of the playoffs.
Devonta Smith, as I said earlier in the episode, I think they're probably Jalen Hurts is going to probably pass the ball. I believe I said somewhere between 25 and 30 times in this game. They're going to have a higher implied passing total in order to beat Washington. I don't think
Smitty went off last week.
I don't think you can beat Washington over the head with the run game. I think they're going to be ready for it. They've seen it enough times that I don't think that's going to happen. So Smith is going to have to perform here. And that's just looking at kind of that.
And quite frankly, just to cut to the chase on a quick hit here, whether that's Devontae Smith or Jonnu Smith, I would be selecting them over the rest of the tier.
I'm on Smith over that. But I could easily pivot into Drake London. I don't hate Drake London as much as Joe does. The implied volume is nice enough. But I think Smith, and this is a total pivot from 3 weeks ago. Again, Jalen Hurts has to pass more. If Jalen Hurts passes more, we have said over and over again that these pass catchers would be fine. If Jalen Hurts doesn't pass, the one who suffers, Devonta Smith. The one who suffers even more, A.J. Brown. But again, all things considered, Dallas Goedert out another game. If that is there, then Devonta Smith is a good play this week. George Play, my lineup for the semifinal. Love to see the semifinals. Kyler, Saquon, Gibbs, JSN, MHJ, Kittle, Flex, Bucky. Chase McLaughlin, Packers defense. Should I be worried about with Kyler and MHJ? Have quarterbacks like Rodgers and Caleb on the waiver wire. Also on the bench, I have DJ Moore instead of MHJ. So you're a stack guy, George. You love the stacks. And the narrative, so you can walk yourself into a narrative, like I said, of Kyler Murray not having to throw a passing touchdown to win. On the other hand, Chicago needs to throw passing touchdowns to win.
But Chicago's okay with not winning.
Chicago is okay with not winning. But I really honestly think in this capacity, Joe, especially in the game of this nature, where, they're 4-10, Caleb is young. For the same reason we have said, you want to let your young players show out towards the end of the year, especially if you're not making the playoffs. Chicago's going to continue to let Caleb Williams go. They're going to continue to let it happen. And when you can walk yourself into a team that this all hinges on Caleb. I'm not trying to talk Caleb up. I'm just trying to talk the situation, Joe. You look at it and you say to yourself, okay, last time they played, they've been on a string of losses, guys. I mean, they've got 8 consecutive losses on their under their belts right now. And the best game in recent memory that they've had was against the Lions, who they happen to be facing this week. 39 pass attempts, only 20 completions, but Detroit, like I said, has suffered a lot of injuries over the past several weeks. Their pass rush isn't as good as it has been in the past. A lot of their players are getting hurt. So if given time and if given the attempts, and like I said, I worry about how much usage they will give Gibbs above his total usage that he's already had. And when you go
which is why I said I don't think they're going to go much above where they're already at.
Right. So you're looking at guys like Craig Reynolds and stuff. And while Goff will still be able to perform well, and this whole team will be able to perform well, maybe their offense isn't winning that time of possession game as it normally does. And looking at it and saying to yourself, the last time Caleb went out there, he put up 26 FanDuel points, right?
Mm-hmm.
The last time this game happened as well, DJ Moore caught that touchdown. Before that touchdown, it was looking kind of spotty, but 8 receptions, 97 yards, and a touchdown. You go in and you just kind of look at the target share. And I'm going to do that while Joe talks a little bit about Kyler and MHJ. But I'm going to go in and look at this target share for DJ Moore versus MHJ and where those opportunities are at to be successful, because I could see a pathway where I'd rather start Caleb and DJ Moore over Kyler and MHJ. All things considered, they're relatively the same. But DJ Moore has that volume upside that if you want to stack them, you don't have to. If you want to float and shoot the gap with Kyler and DJ Moore, I think it's a smart enough play. What do you think, Joe?
You're never going to get me to say play Caleb in a meaningful game, let alone your championship. It's just not going to happen. And George, I actually give you a lot of credit because there's very few teams that are not led by either Allen or Lamar that have gotten to the semis. Now, granted,
as we said, Kyler's one of those guys that could be a top 5 quarterback.
When he does, he does. I look at the rest of your roster, though, dude. I don't think you're in a bad spot. I need to see your opponent to really dive in deep, but I would way rather, when I see what you have here, I don't want to lean into the Chicago. There's just no other nice way to say this.
Where's Darkside at? Where's Darkside?
Darkside knows Chicago sucks, and he stopped showing up in game 3 of the 8-game skid. That's just the reality of the situation. And the other part of this is that what's the weather going to be? This is on the lake in December. Yeah. It's going to be horrendous winds. The guy doesn't have a strong arm. That's been my number one reason why Caleb Williams isn't going to work there. So I don't want to put the passing game of a broken player in there. All hopes and dreams aside or whatever, that's the reality. So, Bob, you're never having me talk up Caleb Williams in December. You're probably never having me talk him up in September or anywhere else in between.
All right, let's take a look. All right, so right now, that game, according to Forecast.io, this comes from RotoWire, it's expected to be 28 degrees with an 8% chance of precipitation, partly cloudy.
How windy?
Well, let's look. More rain in the Seattle forecast, week 16. So Seattle Vikings, JSN, maybe.
Yeah, we're only talking Chicago now, Bob.
I know.
By the way, we're getting weather off that lake, which will change in 10 minutes. It's going to be bad. It's always bad.
I'm looking it up. Some of these websites, it's a little bit of a pain in the ass to do. All right. So Lions at Bears. Winds are 8 miles per hour southeast. Seems like a good matchup, Joe.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
We'll see what happens when it gets there. I do think that DJ Moore is a smart start. over MHJ.
And then here's the opponent's lineup. DJ
Oof.
Forward, Connor, Kyron, Chase, London, Otten, Charbonnet, Bates, Vikings. Yeah, this has got to be tough for you. Your lineup can fight, though. I mean, you need Jamar Chase to have a down week. He gives you that every once in a while. London can give you a 0. It's not likely, but he could. You just need Connor not to hit God mode again. And I think you got yourself a pretty good chance because Kyron's going to produce. That one you can't get around.
Well, but see, George, I see your contrarian kind of decision-making here, though, in leaving Kyler and MHJ in to potentially offset Connor. The only Kyler has a pathway to be successful, guys. I'm not saying that he doesn't. Every week he has a pathway to be successful, but for some reason, this coach flip-flops constantly what this team's identity is, and they don't really have an identity. But one of the things that we all understand is that the Panthers suck at stopping the run. Doesn't matter what kind of run is they're faced against, they suck at it. So maybe this is the week that Kyler does that rushing touchdown. So if you've ridden Kyler this long and he still has upside, and your next option, like Joe said, is Caleb or Rodgers, maybe you don't want to pivot. This is all a mentality thing. I would ask you, George, who would you be mad not starting?
Yeah, if you're wrong on one of the two and the other one goes off, what one upsets you more?
Because if not starting Kyler would piss me off more, Kyler has to stay.
That's right.
I mean, that's just a mentality thing, because even the metrics are there. They're all there that he could run in a touchdown. Carolina is the worst team against running all the time. The pathway is there. Let's just go in as we go to the next deep dive here.
Oh, we're gonna go back to the quick hits real quick.
Right. But I'm gonna look up Carolina for a moment, and the game that I really truly want to see is that when they face Jaden Daniels, because this is going to be where the market is for Kyler Murray. Is there a quarterback rushing touchdown upside here? Jaden Daniels did not get a rushing touchdown against Carolina, but they were up 40-7. That was the game I think he got hurt. That's the game he got hurt. But Mariota ran for 11 carries for 34 yards. If you give Kyler that amount of carries, he's going to score a touchdown. The last time also against the Eagles, another rushing quarterback. What happened? Well, Saquon didn't go off. I know that as a Saquon owner. Hurts got his tush push. Touchdown there. So the optics are there enough, guys. I know I've been shitting on Kyler, and, Jalen Hurts 8 for 59 for a touchdown against Carolina. I know I've been shitting on Kyler, but if Kyler doesn't perform this week, we're done with Kyler. Okay? This is the matchup that's perfect for him, because it affords him the opportunity for the rushing touchdown. So I might even hedge my bet, George, and say Kyler and DJ Moore and leave MHJ on the bench, because Kyler's connection to the perceived stack of Kyler and MHJ is not as strong as the division of that stack. It's just a fact. Okay? Because if Kyler doesn't hit through the air, you're stuck with MHJ. For everything that I've said about Kyler, I leave that there. So Kyler and DJ Moore, if you want to. If you'd rather stack Caleb and DJ Moore, you can. But I don't think I'm playing MHJ if I'm playing.
And you're definitely not playing Caleb.
All right, let's
we buy houses near Austin. So last question was we did this one. Sorry, my bad. If Hurts throws Saquon, get affected, Bob.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's an absolute fact. It's terrible. I hate it. George, thank you. George, give all the trash talk to my Colts. They deserve it. They do deserve it after losing that game to Bo Nix when they got 3 interceptions. That was stupid. I know you're probably sitting there ripping your jersey or sweatshirt off and going, what is happening? What even is this? Dave, who should I start at quarterback, Kyler or Richardson? Also, do you think Indy's a good streaming defense, or do you think there's a better team out on waivers? Dave, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the episode, but just giving you a quick rundown here. Everything that I just said about Kyler is true. Everything. Okay. So if you mentally, Kyler and Richardson are exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, and also in their minds, they're exactly the same. Not hyper efficient. Kyler is managing a game, getting the game, trying to get a win, doing what his coaches ask, nothing more, right? He's nothing, not doing anything exceptional. Richardson the same way, both in similar kind of situations here. So when I look at it, I ask myself, which one of these players has the better upside in terms of the rushing capacity? This week, it's probably still Kyler. But again, Richardson's walking into a matchup where he should be relatively successful running the ball. They both have good running backs behind them. They both have running backs that can take their touchdowns away from them. So honestly, in my opinion, this is as much of a coin flip that you can ask for, because the relative implied totals for both of these, what's the implied total for Arizona and the implied total for Richardson? That way we can find where that market lies.
Well, for us, not necessarily the implied, but for our answers, we have Indianapolis putting up 24.1 and Arizona putting up 25. So it'd be Arizona by a point.
Relatively the same. Arizona has a better pass matchup than the Colts do. But the Colts have a better rushing quarterback upside. So take that for what it's worth. I'd lean Kyler over Richardson in I think at points, and then I could see myself leaning Richardson over Kyler at points. I need to think about this question a little bit more, but my initial Tuesday lean would probably be Richardson.
And mine's Kyler. Bob, you got to get back in the quick hit mindset. We're the quick hitters now.
I don't. Dave, I don't like that question. I don't like it. But in terms of the Indy is a good streaming defense, everything that I said about Indy earlier in the episode, it stands. I don't think I can trust them. If Mason Rudolph plays, I could definitely trust them if Will Levis plays. But I think that out of the other guys that we've mentioned over the course of the episode, Bengals, you could look into the Bengals. Who else? Chargers, if the Chargers are still out there. And Joe, what's Atlanta's matchup this week, by the way?
The ATL is playing against the the Giants, New York Giants, NYG.
Atlanta's a good play too.
Yeah.
Atlanta's a good play too.
All right. So we are family. Higher waiver wire preference, Wentz or Rudolph. Wentz is a better player, but I want to have Rudolph this week. That Houston defense puts pressure on people like crazy. This is his first start back in forever. I don't like that matchup, even though it's in Kansas City, with that defense that Houston brings to the table. There is something about Rudolph playing for his life. There is something about that. The defense isn't exactly world beating against him. And I like where Rudolph could give me a higher upside than Wentz. At the end of the day, Tennessee's playing with nothing to lose. Kansas City has to play tighter to the vest. All that in.
Yeah, that goes down. We are family. I do like Wentz a lot, but when you're looking at a team that has produced 45 sacks on the year, and you look at a team that's produced 33, there's some conversation that you can have that indicative of what kind of pressures that they see and that they give. If we go from week 9 here to week 15, in terms of sacks, Houston's at 18 and Indy's at 17. So the framework is there that maybe the matchups for either of these quarterbacks aren't good. So I'm curious, are those the best players on your waiver wire right now?
So we buy houses. You're worried about Lattimore shadowing rolling towards Devontae Smith. Long story short is that's not who Lattimore's going to cover. Lattimore always covers the more physical type receiver, which is A.J. Brown by a mile. Lattimore loves fighting the big physical guy. Give Mike Evans as my primary example. He's not going to be on Devontae Smith. And
they're not going to go.
Last week, the Steelers, with their number 2 corner going down,
still
kept everything on A.J. Brown. And that's why Devontae Smith was able to do what he did. It's going to be a very similar defensive quality against him. Do not be worried about Lattimore on Smith because he won't be.
Yeah, love to hear this, family. Breaking your league scoring record is nothing to scoff at. So, walking into next year, regardless of championship or no championship, which seems like your team is pretty stacked, you'll be walking away with some good pride to go into the draft with next year. I just really need Kyler to make 14 points and an MHJ touchdown. The MHJ touchdown is what I'm not sure is going to happen.
Yeah.
Kyler can reach 14 points without throwing the ball in the end zone.
Yeah.
Just ask Trey McBride. Okay. He can do it without doing that. He could get 14 points. That's a rushing touchdown, 50 yards, and about 200 yards passing.
Which is pretty Myers. Pretty Kyler.
So if you'd be more mad than not start Kyler, yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. Last week, Kyler threw like 3 red zone targets to MHJ. So don't know if against the Carolina, he could have a touchdown. Yeah, the 3 red zone targets are nice. As we've said all year, you want wide receivers that are getting end zone looks. It's a smart play to go after. You have to, the fumble on the goal line was just, it was like watching Jefferson drop the ball and then them going for it on 4th down and not kicking the field goal and getting no points in yesterday's game with the Vikings. That was like I feel like Jefferson was looking at his hands like Hayden in The Little Giants looks at his hands and is like, come on, boys, why'd you let me down? And then he has to go practice with toilet paper rolls the whole time. Like, absurd. This season has been absurd. But if you like that play, go with it. But again, you're kind of locking yourself in that if Connor does go off, you won't be winning. If Connor goes off and you stick yourself with Kyler and MHJ,
you basically are losing the league on one player.
You're not winning. So that's why I'm saying think about the pivot. You don't have to make the pivot if you don't want to, but think about it because you're going up against a really strong team and you need everything that you've got. And maybe it's MHJ. Maybe it is. But if you put all those marbles into one thing and it doesn't pan out, the diversification could be valuable. We are Keenan, Cooper, or Ford in my second flex spot, PPR. We've talked about all these players this week. If you're worried about Caleb on the lake, winds, doesn't look like it's going to be super windy, then maybe you fade Keenan and
it will be
Ford. I like Keenan because he's getting volume.
And I like Ford because of his volume. Ford's volumes will be insane.
Both are good plays. I think that you could play both of them, but knowing how strong your team is, I think that I would rather go with Keenan because I see a little bit more touchdown potential with Keenan this week. But Ford, I think, could be there. I have to look a little bit more into it throughout the week, but Ford's a good play this week, guys. Nick, welcome back. Welcome back. Start the Broncos defense this week, or should I just stream the Falcons, Bengals, or Chiefs? All of those defenses we talked about, Nick. You can go back in if you didn't hear it. Joe gave a really reasonable response why the Broncos might not be the defense to have this week. And I told you earlier that Herbert doesn't turn the ball over a lot. They're going to try to keep this ball away from the Broncos. While the Broncos are the best defense of the bunch, maybe not this week. Joe gave you a very reasonable argument why the Chiefs are a good play this week. Even if Mixon decides to run the ball, whatever. But we just saw against teams that pass the ball, the Chiefs are capable of getting interceptions. They are going to give up points. So if the points given up are the valuable thing for you, maybe you don't pick the Chiefs. Bengals, same framework. I think out of this grouping, the Falcons and the Bengals are the strongest in terms of
Falcons are the best matchup.
making the quarterback that they have get turnovers, because while the Falcons and the Bengals aren't the best defenses in the league,
neither of them really get pressure.
This is not strictly about bad stuff, but since week, this is considering also that they've played Will Levis and Jameis Winston, but we saw Bengals, Winston and Will Levis, boatload of interceptions. Mm-hmm. Terrible quarterbacks are likely to throw lots of interceptions. So, the Chiefs are up there. I think it's a reasonable market to be into. I'd lean the Bengals because they have taken advantage of terrible quarterbacks and their offense is actually really good. But again, that's the same kind of discussion we had with the Packers, where if your offense is so good and stays on the field too long, then it doesn't give you that many opportunities to cause turnovers. But that's not the Bengals. The Bengals just go down and score if they're scoring. And if not, then they give the ball back right away. Mm-hmm. I like both Falcons and Bengals. But the Falcons just don't cause a lot of turnovers. Mm-hmm. But if it's the fourth string quarterback for the Giants, they could. It's a deep dynasty, just looking for an emergency quarterback, as I dealt Darnold right before the deadline and couldn't get a deal done to get Rodgers. I have Hurts and Allen. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, you're fine.
You're going to be fine. Go Rudolph in that discussion. Yeah. Love that you've built this dynasty team with both Hurts and Allen.
Yeah.
That's an insane dynasty team. That's like a championship winning dynasty team just with those quarterbacks on a year basis.
Like Bob and I are about to have debates about taking those two in the top 3 of our playoff best balls we do next week or in 2 weeks.
Yeah. With Waddle being questionable with a knee, would you consider dropping Waddle for McMillan? Yes, Trone. Yes. And like I said, I've talked up McMillan too much, so he's not going to do anything. So I'm sorry ahead of time, but hoping he does. I think it's a good play. Nick, 2 running backs in the order you ordered them, Bijan and Pollard. Mm-hmm. Bijan is getting massive volume. Kirk Cousins can't move in the pocket. If Penix comes in, maybe that's changed a little bit. I don't see it doing that. Pollard is another volume play. If Indy is able to go up early on Tennessee, be wary of Tony Pollard, though, because he gets less volume if they're behind. Tracy, insofar as that's true, and Joe has talked about Tracy a lot, the matchup versus Atlanta isn't the worst, but they've gotten significantly worse.
It's the quarterback playing any better.
It's gotten significantly worse over the course of the last 5 weeks.
That's right.
And so while we both still love Tyrone Tracy, and he has a good matchup coming down the pipeline, it's Bijan and Pollard there. Mm-hmm. I have Gibbs, Monty, Chubb, and Ford, so it was a bizarre week for me. Yeah. Woo.
Yeah.
At least I won't be wondering which to start. Yeah. Now you don't even have it's not even a question for you. Is Fairbairn okay for this week, or should I pivot to Ryland? But he said me. He didn't ask.
I know he said you. He does this. I feel like he just does this.
So I would check the weather. If it's raining in Seattle, I'm not on Riker. I love the Minnesota Kickers, and Riker proved it this week. He didn't prove it last week. That was disappointing. But Ryland is probably the play in Carolina. The implied chances that they're going to score more points, Ryland could have a lot of extra point attempts, but easily those extra point attempts could convert into field goals. So I think that Arizona is going to move the ball. Where those points are going to come from is going to be a question. So I think that Fairbairn, though, I would be considerate of weather again in Kansas City. Haven't heard anything negative about the weather in Kansas City, but again, the weather is a very important thing when we look at kickers. And when we look at the weather warnings coming out, week 15, we want week 16. The website I normally go to isn't up right now for the weathers. It's supposed to be clear in the Chiefs game, so no weather issues at all. So I'd still roll out Fairbairn because there's a really good likelihood that Houston's going to be stopped before the red zone a decent number of times, which will give Fairbairn a fair amount of kicks in that game. And I think with what we said about Stroud, I think that that's an accurate assumption to make. So I'd be on
Okay.
Fairbairn, Ryland, McManus, and then Reichert. Lutz is another option at kicker against LA. I like that in a dome a lot. I do, especially what we saw out of Bo Nix last week. There's a potential there. This game could be weirdly gross. I think Lutz is a great option as well. So if you personally don't like Fairbairn and you'd rather have a dome kicker, go with Lutz.
Go with the dome.
The team can move the ball. Who should I start my wide receiver 2? My number 1 is Adams at the moment. My options are Addison, Debo, and Pickens if available. It's Addison. But I would be curious to watch that weather, guys. It is right now on Tuesday. It's saying definite rain. Definite rain. Not even like, oh, it's raining. So maybe you want to pivot off Addison if you're worried about the rain. But Addison, like I said last week, if Darnold is throwing the ball 25 plus times a game, 30 plus times a game, Addison is getting 6 to 9 to 10 targets. And Addison can do a lot with that number of targets. So for anybody owning JSN, anybody owning, Addison, will have to look up how those players do in the rain, how their quarterbacks do in the rain, to really make a reasonable decision here about which one of those guys is worth going with. So I'm going to write that down as something to come back to tomorrow. The Seattle, Minnesota game, rain, how those players do in the rain. We can look that up tomorrow. I'm not starting Waddle, and I'm not starting Debo either. I'm not doing that. Start 3 wide receivers. Nick, for me, it'd be Amon-Ra, Devonta Smith, and Worthy. Worthy and Reed share the same amount of upside in my mind. They do the same thing. They're essentially the same player, which is weird to say. They're both explosive. They both get opportunities to run the ball. They're both getting lowish kind of target numbers, but I think it favors Worthy this week over Reed. Yeah. So I'm on Amon-Ra, Devontae, and Worthy. Joe, you could probably talk yourself into Devontae, Amon-Ra, and Reed.
Yeah, it's probably how I would go. I'm not sold on Worthy yet. I guess is part of my answer there.
It's fair. It's fair. And everything you said about potentially Pacheco thing it is fair, but I like the young guys that are getting volume. Again, like I said, in order to be successful, they don't have to give the ball to Reed. They really don't. It just doesn't have to happen. Start 1, sit 1, Kraft or Strange.
I'm probably going with Strange.
Yeah, you would. Sorry. When it comes to this, yeah, it's Strange. And it's Strange because of the volume. While Kraft does get valuable looks, ever since all of the complement of wide receivers has been healthy, it's either been volume or a touchdown, but not both. So, walking into implied volume, I think, is a better situation here, Dave. So I'm on Strange for that discussion. Is Ferguson an okay tight end this week? Sure. Yeah, we were kind of, you're kind of blitzkrieg by what happened this past week. Looking up Ferguson's stats from this past week here. It was it's always going to be a CD and Dowdle game. Okay. That's not going away. So it's always going to be a CD and Dowdle game. And Ferguson right now, while he was a good pickup a couple weeks ago and nice as a because we saw Schoonamaker getting a lot of involvement there. It's kind of a low end option right now. And when you look at where the matchup kind of sits here, it's a good matchup, right? It's a good matchup for Ferguson. Brenton Strange has a slightly better matchup with more implied volume. So there's a very realistic chance that Dallas will be stuck in a lot of garbage time scenario against Tampa Bay, and you can walk your way into that. But also, Dallas could beat Tampa Bay because Rico's been playing well. Lamb is still CD Lamb. There's a chance that Tampa Bay falters a little bit. I would be on Strange over Ferguson. They're not so far apart from me, but I like Strange's volume better than Ferguson's volume. Chris, as a second flex, would you go Javonte Williams, Tajay Spears, Jalen Coker, or Zach Charbonnet? Chris, it's never Javonte Williams. Okay.
No, it's not.
It's never a Javonte Williams. The 1 week that I could walk myself into Javonte Williams, the dude puts up negative points. It was a great situation the week that I had him in. We're done. We're done with Javonte.
Yeah, Chris, for this one being a quick hitter, to me, the answer is Sharps. And it's not really that deep.
For those of you asking me who's on my do not draft list unequivocally, it's Javonte Williams.
Oh, he's dead, dude. Yeah.
Dead. Absolutely dead. I could see myself on Tajay Spears as well, Joe, because the matchup is good enough. If he gets the usage.
If Pollard's out, yeah, I'll give you that. But if Pollard's in, it's Sharps.
I'd watch that situation very closely, Chris. Do I sub out Reed for Dobbs? I would.
Yeah.
I would. Just looking at what they're good at. Green Bay's matchup is good. It's good against New Orleans. So I'm walking in and saying to myself, okay, where's my wiggle room with Dobbs? They're just going to keep giving him the ball, man. Full starting team. Hurts, Allen, Gibbs, Henry, Connor, Ford, Keenan Allen, BTJ, Evans, Kincaid. I tried to up the tight end, but didn't want to pay. It's fair. Ferguson is still kind of like a good kind of play to get into the red zone, because I do think they're not going to struggle to move the ball against Tampa Bay, to be honest with you. So he's still a good play. I'd like to keep London in the lineup, especially against the Giants, and that's fair. Would you flex Smith over any of these running backs y'all suggested earlier? Pollard, Rashad White, or Ford? Yeah, I could see myself flexing Smith over probably Pollard. Probably Pollard in that scenario. But I could also start him over Ford too, because that game could get out of hand really fast. It just really depends. I traded Javonte Williams for Derrick Henry in week 3. Boom. That's after Javonte Williams. Was that after Javonte Williams' big game? And Henry was like, I'm just going to kind of fart around a little bit here. Great move, Great move. That best move of the, like, if we can give points and props, I know a lot of the team players out there made some really phenomenal moves this year. I know we got drubbed on a couple of moves. But man, wow. That wasn't even his good game. Like, his good game came like week 7 or something like that. It's a news on Walker, though, because if Walker plays, Charbonnet is nothing. I agree, Tyler. I agree with you.
Charbonnet is nothing. I don't agree with that part.
No, Charbonnet is still going to get his pass catching work. But again, this game is going to be dictated by this weather. Like, it says definite rain. Even in a game, Geno Smith's not the most accurate guy either. So, maybe JSN suffers, maybe Sharp suffers. I just don't see this game, if it's definite rain, as a super high scoring game. I really don't. Charbonnet will probably get 4 to 5 catches if Walker plays. I think you can kind of bank on that. But I'm not fully in on Sharps this week, guys, especially after what happened last week. Who should I start in my flex? Breece Hall, Pickens if he's a go, Waddle, or Debo? I think it'd be Breece. If Pickens is a go, I would really highly consider Pickens. It's really tough, though, as you know, you've probably been playing fantasy for a long time, Dave, where it's really hard to start a player coming back from an injury right away. But the capacity in which Pickens is important to this offense can't be understated. You've seen, and Joe will tell you firsthand, he's been to a couple games recently. The Steelers are a different offense without George Pickens on the field, and they had to adapt very drastically to take care of that. So, Joe, how do you feel about Pickens if he's a go versus Breece Hall?
I got if Pickens is a go, he's got to be the one you go with. He is centric to their offense, and they suck without him. This is also the Ravens, and they love forcing the ball to him. I mean, it's just that straightforward. And Breece Hall,
Yeah.
I can't pick a Jet. I'm so done with the Jets.
Yeah. So if Pickens is healthy, while it is hard to run a player out there that's just been coming off the injury, Pickens is the best player of the bunch, who is a valuable piece of the offense right now, currently. So it's there. No, this is where it's stupid, Nick. This is where it's real dumb. Today I went outside without a coat on. This morning I had to wear a coat because it was cold as, it was super cold. Right now it's 46 degrees. Right now it's 46 degrees. But guess what? Tomorrow is going to be 39 with rain and snow. And then it's going to be 25 on Sunday, which is also dumb. And Christmas is supposed to rain. Hate that. This is weird. This is the first person that's had a Javonte in the championship game. Obviously not
This
riding
doesn't
him
make
hard.
sense to me.
Obviously not riding him hard. Nick, like I've said over and over again, I chase tight end points, but I also chase tight end volume. Gray doesn't have the volume. And I like younger guys, like I said, from in the terms of the playoffs picture here. Maybe they utilize Gray a little bit more, or maybe they position Kelsey in a way to position himself to get through the playoffs really well. Strange's volume is nice. It's nice. Week 17, Joe, looking at the matchups there, do you think Strange is a good play in week 17?
Volume doesn't go away. It's integral to the
volume does
Jacksonville
go
offense.
away. Volume can go away.
Oh, no, not in this case, because it's integral to their offense. He doesn't get – there's a base targets
they
that
play
is
Tennessee.
just there with Jacksonville's tight end. So I'm not worried about him moving forward.
Yeah, so going back, just looking at the last time they placed the Titans, gross game, really gross game. The Jags ended up winning that game. Mac Jones was 22 for 31. You look at where Evan Ingram was at. He had 6 targets in that game. Strange had 1. So tight ends had a total of 7 targets in that game. That's nice. If he would have gotten all those targets, that would have been 5 catches for 64 yards. No touchdowns. So, yeah, Strange is there. The volume is there. It makes sense. Full trade was Derrick Henry, Quentin Johnston for Javonte Williams, Gabe Davis, and a 3rd rounder. Sold Quentin High a few weeks later. God, brilliant. Brilliant. Heat wave. Absolutely. I'm going to my first fantasy season in the semis, and I'm so nervous. Nick, have fun with it, man. Whether it's a money league or not, the more money you have on the table, the more nervous you can be. So I get that. I get that incredibly. It's nice to win, say, $500, $250, $800, $1,000. If you're in a league that's like 10,000, yeah, that, like Steve, looking at it and be like, hey, I want to win this because this is big, 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 big money. Yeah, Javonte's so useless. Javonte is one of the most useless players. Again, when you have Jaleel McLaughlin, when not hurt, out snapping you, it's insane. I did pay up for Debo and Chubb mid-season, so you won some, you lose some. This is exactly the thing. If you had joined, if you were with us earlier in the season, Debo was one of the players that we were buying the skid. We were buying the dip on Debo. We weren't paying a lot to get into Debo, but we were buying the dip on Debo. Chubb was one of those guys we weren't buying the dip on so heavily. But Debo didn't cost you a lot to move into him. So that's the other piece to look into, right? The fantasy season ebbs and flows, and you just kind of have to move with it. Kelvin Ridley was pretty much dead in the water for the first 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden, the resurgence in targets, which was absolutely insane. Anyone thinking Josh doesn't play second half and still has 30 points? Yeah. You could see a pathway where Josh Allen gets 2 touchdowns, 60 rushing yards, and then 150 yards passing and a touchdown in the first half, and they sit him. I don't think they would, but they could. Nick, pressure of being the number 1 seed and going 11-3. 11-3 in your first fantasy season, Joe. Talk to us about that. That's big.
You go 11-3. It's awesome, regardless, man. Just be happy.
That's big.
You know what I mean?
You're welcome.
What's the issue? First one, last one, this one, it's always good.
CC, I was saying this. I was thinking about you yesterday when he dropped that pass. And I want to tell you something. Ready? So I was watching my little boy, and I just got home, and he was very cranky. I just finished dinner, all that stuff, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna turn on the game. And he doesn't like football right now. He's 10 months old. He doesn't know what's going on. But I watched it soon. As soon as I turned it on, Jettis drops that pass. I was like, God. I was like, it was a walk-in touchdown. And like I said, he looked at his hands like Hayden in Little Giants. And he's like, what's wrong with me? How did I drop that? It was a wide open touchdown. And when I was thinking about you, as Caleb Williams continued to march down that field and they gave that touchdown to Keenan Allen, I was like, shit. I was like, that made Minnesota get down to like 8 points, 6 points, drop them down for 10. CC, you had it, man. You had it. It was absolutely crazy. And you absolutely have to enjoy the moment, guys. And this is why I said to George Plays and a couple other guys, if the statistic lean is sound and it makes sense to start a guy, and it's not just a gut, but it's a gut and a stat, and you'd be mad not starting him, start him. Like right now, it's put up or shut up time. You bought these guys. You have these guys. Use them how you want to. It's your season. And it's on the line. It's where that money's coming from. My other team is 12-2 and came second. The leader was 13-1, but I am the 1-13-1. Love that. Love the when you can beat the leader. For the next 2 weeks, is it Dobbs over Reed, considering just dropping Reed now? I think so. Joe, how do you feel about that?
Well, I don't. Dobbs is not as good as Reed, but they're buying into him. I don't want to cut Reed, Nick. I don't. It's just the answer. I want to have them both, but I don't want to cut Reed.
Yeah, and it all depends on who do you have on the back end, because here's the thing that needs to be made very clear. While I said that Dobbs is a very valuable piece of this offense, it is still an offense that is not passing the ball a lot. Okay? They're just not doing it. And so either way you slice it, you know, it's an interesting point to make. Reed has a really good upside still. Dobbs' upside is very similar, but where's the ball going to go? Dobbs is being reliable. I'd lean into Dobbs, but you know, I love Reed too much to drop him like that. And it is what we live for, CC. That's the thing. If you could think about all of this through stats and everything made sense, and there was no weather, no tornadoes, no nothing like that, players not dropping balls, it'd be easy to say Jefferson every single week, right? I like Spears, but we'll have to think about Spears as the week goes on. That fumble 6-2 needed 40, would have had 50 easy. You did. I mean, I remember you needing 30. So, I mean, you know, as I believe one of the other players ended up going up and scoring a little bit more, but you had it. It was there. Jesse, out of the playoffs, but still trying to beat this guy that I'm facing this week. Out of these guys, who do I start? 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. Lamb, London, Jennings, MHJ, Shakir, Addison, Pacheco, Tracy, Sharps. I think easily I'm leaning Lamb and Jennings on Tuesday. I'm easily leaning Lamb and Jennings. Joe, talk to us a little bit about Lamb. I mean, Lamb's volume this year has been amazing.
Yeah, dude, there's no way you're not playing Lamb. Like, that's like the easy question there. The better question is, why is London still being considered?
Talk to us about Lamb. Why for anybody curious about Lamb's situation, why is Lamb still the guy?
Because he gets targeted like crazy.
Not moving the ball.
That part hasn't gone away. He's still the only game in town. They don't. I thought Cooks was going to step up and have a much better year as their number 2, and he got hurt, so he didn't really get to show it the way I wanted him to. But the fundamental fact is that they don't have a number 2. They just traded for that one, the young kid they got,
Mingo.
Mingo, from Carolina. He probably is the number 2 next year, but he ain't there yet. And until they get another 2, he's just getting forced the ball to him like crazy. And at the end of the day, this is a game that comes down to volume and targets. And his ain't going away.
So speaking of volume, how do you feel about London and Jennings? Because they're the volume. London, Jennings, and Shakir and Addison are volume plays, but Addison.
Well, let's back into a key clause here that I kind of gave exception there with Lamb. Quality volume, because London isn't getting it anymore. Cousins is not getting the ball to him. Really to anyone. Cousins is breaking before our eyes. We're seeing the death of a quarterback. It's kind of sad. But the end of the day is that's why I don't want anyone with London. But when we're talking about Shakir or Addison, Shakir doesn't give me enough downfield presence to matter. I mean, you can give all the volume you want 3 inches from a line of scrimmage. What Wan'Dale Robinson was that at the beginning of the year, but we don't have him anywhere near our list now because he's not giving any after the catch. He's not giving any explosion. Mm-hmm. So Shakir is really kind of dropped in my love department for there. I love how Addison took off, and he's really been on fire the last couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. So Addison's who I would go with in my second receiver to answer this question. When we dive into the flex portion of it, Jennings is still a worthwhile consideration. To me, Pacheco this week in particular is a massive consideration because of how Kansas City has to play the game. The problem with Pacheco is he doesn't look like Pacheco. Mm-hmm. So, and when you come off one of those injuries, it can be a hot minute. So if I'm ranking your flex after I've already taken Addison and Lamb out, it's probably going to go Sharps, Jennings, Pacheco, Harrison, Shakira, London.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Lamb and Jennings, I think for sure. I think the implied volume is going to be good volume still. And I could easily see myself with London. I mean, I agree with everything that Joe has said about the Falcons insofar as that's true. I'm a little nervous about London this week. I agree with you. What I've said about MHJ and Shakir is accurate. The rain might scare you off of Addison. I could easily see Lamb, Jennings, and Addison in my estimation. Speaking of Addison, I'm going to be looking up, Joe, and Jesse, we'll revisit this here. I'm going to be looking up how Darnold does in the rain. So keep your head on a swivel for that, Jesse, how Darnold does in the rain, because it is definite rain.
No, you're getting way too much slanted data because all he was in the rain was as a Jet, and everything sucks as a Jet.
But it's going to take everything into account, though, Joe. I'm
not worried about Darnold as much. Darnold can fling the ball. Caleb can't.
I am slightly worried, though, when it comes down to rain, that rain does make a difference, especially Seattle rain is not anything to kind of scoff at here, okay? We've seen even the best. We have seen the best of players do not that great when it comes to Seattle rain. So I would be a little bit nervous about that. It's the only reason I'm looking this up, because I think without a doubt, in my estimation, that it's Lamb, Jennings, and Addison this week. And we've been flip-flopping back and forth all year about these guys, Jesse. I mean, there have been Jennings's play this week. That should have went off, but the rain, right? And being burned 2 weeks in a row with rain is not really fun. So I'm looking that up right now, Joe. Let's clear up some of these quick hits, and then we can talk a little bit about the deep dive that we have there.
The last one, yeah.
Family, my kids are 18 months and still don't get football, but we watched our Bills beat the Lions together. It was just sad the Kincaid TD got taken away. Have you baptized your baby through a table yet? Or your 18-month-old through a table yet? I see that on TikTok and Instagram all the time. I'm just very curious. Being a Bills fan, have you done that yet? Because I think it's a great kind of tradition to think about. But it's good to get your kids involved. Joe's son is all on the bus with the Steelers. Mm-hmm. They even sent me a FaceTime message on Sunday when I was coming home from the market with my wife and my kid, and they were like, Rashad Bateman 2 touchdowns, and I'm like, oh God, I knew it was going to be something stupid like that. I love it. Yes, I do. CC, yes, I do. I do like Ford over Brees.
It's stupid, but it's true.
The implied volume is almost the same.
It is.
And the thing that works in Ford's favor that doesn't work in Brees's favor is they still have two other running backs on the they have two other running backs that are super talented, or not super talented, but are talented enough. They also have two wide receivers that are commanding huge volume and huge good volume and can move the ball downfield really well. If DTR is in, there's no reason I can't see it. I can't see a script where DTR passes the ball for 225 yards, Joe. I just can't see it.
No.
Yeah, if Sharps is definitely a play, noting that if Geno plays, the weather's kind of shitty, or the weather's definitely going to be shitty. If Geno plays and Ken Walker doesn't, Sharps is the play. Just as a note there. Which defenses has the highest upside this week? Packers, Falcons, Bills, Texans. It's the Bills.
So it's the Bills or the Falcons?
The Bills. So going in, and just taking a look at this. I know you don't want to look at the Bills, like I said earlier in the episode, after having all that craziness happen to them over the past couple of weeks. They faced some really good teams. But even facing those good teams, since week 9 to week 15, let's make our sample size even smaller, Joe. Let's go week 13 to week 15 for the Bills. Okay.
Yeah, for the last 3 weeks, pretty much better. While you're doing that, I'm gonna give a hit up on the Packers. There's all this expectation this week because of the 13-point spread that this is gonna be a cakewalk and a walk away, and it might be that way at halftime. But this being late in the year, a Monday Night Football game on the short week, the Packers are going to do an absolute ton of prevent defense at the end of the game, which is going to result in garbage time against them and a backdoor cover. So the Packers are not going to run away with this. And because they're going to be playing so much of the percentage of the game in shallow, let the underneath happen, they're not going to get the turnovers. So the Packers, even though all the spreads are great, they're less likely to force stuff to happen. And the Bills, on the other hand, are playing a turnover machine in their home confines. So I'm going, the way I would rank this is Bills, Falcons, Packers. The Texans have a great pass rush there. They would be fourth on the list. I don't think Kansas City overall is going to open their game plan up enough for it to be the problem. And George isn't here for George play, but don't invest in the Colts. Just don't. So that's how we're going to hit you up on the quick hit here, Bob, unless you found that stuff you were looking for.
I haven't found the stuff about Sam Darnold in the rain. It doesn't say much about it.
But CC's anyway, right here. Pacheco was supposed to be a lottery ticket and a Powerball winner, and he turned out just to be a $1 scratch off. That is what Pacheco is.
We said that though. Is that
we did?
You know, I said it in a different way. I said that I still think that Hunt is going to get the bulk of the carries, and they're going to save Pacheco for the playoffs. But, you know, the transition was very, very interesting that once both running backs were healthy and back, they just kept on passing the ball more. I mean, that it was a total 180 from the beginning of the season. But I just to chime in on this, Joe, you know, the information I was looking up about the Bills defense, that over the last 3 weeks, they've gotten 5 sacks and they have caused a decent amount of fumbles with no interceptions against teams that pass the ball a lot. Falcons in that same span of time, 13 sacks, 2 interceptions, 3 fumbles recovered. You know, taking all that into consideration this week for Atlanta, Joe, you know, Atlanta's facing the Giants, who are going to be a turnover machine. You know, like I said earlier in the episode, I could walk my way into a conversation where the Bills are definitely going to get an interception this week from Drake May. It's almost guaranteed.
I got you.
I also can guarantee you the Falcons are going to get some from whatever quarterback's playing in Green Bay.
So why don't the Niners use Debo Moore as a running back? Oh, dude, how many licks does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop? No one really knows. Like, it would make sense, but they're not doing it.
Yeah, I mean, well, or they're doing it and it's just not going anywhere. Like you said, Joe.
This is a couple times in Buffalo gets the snow, but not really.
This is
I think that fumble in the snow, if we're looking for a concrete answer, probably has a lot to do with it. Mm-hmm. They're down on Debo. For some of it's Debo's fault. I'm not gonna say it's not, but some of it was before things even fell apart. They were down on Debo.
Yeah, and family, we talked about this over the last several weeks, and you know, we mentioned on the episodes that, I would be like this past week and the week before, the Bills were a good enough optics play against teams that would pass the ball a lot if they could get the turnovers. They didn't get the turnovers. They let up a lot of points. It turned out to be shit. That needs to be discussed. Looking at these defenses though, and just going back before we get to the last deep dives of the day here, looking at these defenses and just looking over the defenses over the last 3 weeks, averaging, five defenses here that it will be a total of 6, but 5 rankings over the last 3 weeks of this, or 13, 14, 15, 3 weeks. Denver averaging 20 points a game, 5 sacks, 5 interceptions, 3 defensive touchdowns. You can thank Jameis Winston for that. Dallas, 14 sacks, 4 interceptions, 3 fumbles recovered, 4 fumbles forced, 1 defensive touchdown, 36.
So you're talking for the last 6 games of the year, Buffalo is only played 1 game that isn't against a rookie or a backup quarterback, and that's going to be against Rodgers, who will phone it in and might actually not even play.
Then, Joe, Cincinnati is the 3rd best fantasy scoring defense over this last string of games. 6 sacks, 6 interceptions. Again, Winston and Levis, and 2 defensive touchdowns. And the Steelers, number 4, 10 sacks, 3 interceptions, 5 fumble recovers, 1 defensive touchdown. Atlanta and Kansas City are tied at 31 points. 13 sacks, 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles recovered. Kansas City, 11 sacks, 4 interceptions, 3 fumble recovered. Again, you see a trend here. Teams that play Jameis Winston have more interceptions over the last several weeks.
So, CC, to your point there, we do have a donation button inside the description, which we're more for open to.
Yeah, it takes 3 licks.
But family, to your point, why it's such a cakewalk, I've never seen such an overrated division before a season started. Miami became you weren't here preseason, but it was a very clear projection on who was going to win that division. The Bills, because they're the only one with an adult in the room. And that's exactly what ended up happening. That smarter than thou child down south imploded. The Jets were letting the inmates run the asylum, and Kraft is too corrupt to make a winner. He doesn't have billet sheet to hide his stuff anymore. So you look at that, it's the Bills division now, and probably even after Allen's gone. As long as you guys still got your coach, y'all be fine. Let's finish this last deep dive, Bob.
I have a quick question for you, though.
Hit me.
Okay, yeah. So I was thinking about Nick Foles for a minute.
Said Nick Foles?
Which quarterback, was it Carson Wentz or Nick Foles that came in and
Foles came in, Wentz did the first 16 games or whatever.
Okay, I was just curious about that because, like family is saying here, Mahomes might play this week. And
he shouldn't.
That doesn't make any sense to me. He's played through these high ankle sprains before, but that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think he should do that.
Unless they can clinch they can't clinch because they lost to Buffalo. They have to win 2 of the last 3. Wouldn't it make more sense to give them the day off and play Christmas?
That's what makes sense. The Finns are still talking playoffs. They are the Cowboys fans of the AFC. Yeah, that's what I just said.
Overrated pansy, not going to be good.
Yeah, so Joe, when you look at it, Kansas City is 13-1. Bills are 11-3. So in order for them to catch, Buffalo has to win the next 3 games. You can sit Patrick Mahomes 1 game. That would not be the end of your season. You can still win that game against Houston without Patrick Mahomes. I think that Andy Reid's going to come to his senses and not play Patrick Mahomes this week, even though he was a full participant.
Or he's not playing Mahomes on Christmas. You might make the argument, play him at home and then bench him on the road. Because, again, they only need to win 1 of their last 3. I'm pretty sure the last one's against Denver.
Oh, dude. Cincinnati still has an outside chance of making the playoffs.
No, they don't. Cincinnati needs Denver to basically lose out, Miami to lose out, and the Colts to lose out. No, they don't.
But by what you were saying, though, Joe, You think Denver can lose out.
I think
And you
Denver
think
can
Miami
lose
can
out, but
lose
the
out.
other three can't.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, we're going to finish up today's episode with IP's deep dive
5.
here. And then we'll be
Scary
back tomorrow
Terry,
at 2:45.
Collins, Higgins, BTJ, Neighbors, Jennings, and Drake London. That's what 8-team lineups give you, man. So right now, it's hard to fight those ones between Minko, Terry, BTJ, and Neighbors. So who we put Juan Jennings or London in? I'm certainly not putting London in. So that part's an easy don't include. To me, I'm probably not putting Jennings in either. I mean, I know that I came up here all season long, believed Higgins wasn't going to play.
Hold on. This is a deep dive. Tell me why.
Why I'm not putting Jennings in over Higgins?
You would not put Jennings in over Neighbors. Give me a good reason why you wouldn't put Jennings
I got to take this back. I don't have a good reason. I just, in my head, was how much I've hated on Higgins about him not playing at the end of the year, and he is, which is outstanding to me. It's
the
kind of not logical.
possible starter for the New York Football Giants is Tim Boyle.
Yeah, you can't start a guy with that.
I'm not saying Cooper Rush is good, but I'm also saying when it comes to volume, we talked about this earlier in the episode, volume matters.
And Neighbors gets like 11 targets a game.
But good volume matters more.
That's true.
Malik Neighbors.
But Atlanta doesn't have a pass rush.
But listen, Malik Neighbors is already pissed off. Okay.
Well, yeah.
That he's had to go through 4 garbage, flat out garbage.
And he's going to get that kid from Miami. So what's the point?
Over the course of the year. Exactly. All I'm simply saying is you have said that you can't put your trust in certain players in the fantasy playoffs, and then you're telling me that you're going to put your trust in Tim Boyle?
I'm not going to lie. Neighbors might have been an oversight in that one. Starting 5 is a lot. So definitely, let's do it in the order of actually starting. I'm definitely starting Collins, Scary Terry, and BTJ. That's a given. Higgins is probably 4th. Yeah, Bob, you might be talking me into Jennings over Neighbors. But this is more so because of how much we're tearing Neighbors down than Jennings being built.
I'm not tearing Neighbors down. I'm not tearing Neighbors down at all.
I mean, Jennings hasn't done anything in the last 3 weeks, and we just give him the excuse because of weather.
It is because of weather. He had 9 targets last week in the rain. He had 7 targets in the snow.
Other people were able to catch the ball.
I understand that, but the targets haven't gone away.
No, I get that, but neither are Neighbors. Neighbors is a better athlete with the ball.
Okay, but my question to you is, and let's discuss, because this is a deep dive here. We have some questions coming in through the chat, some comments coming in through the chat as well. Okay, this past week he had 10 receptions for 14 targets, or on 14 targets with a touchdown against the Ravens. Okay, now he hasn't had a game. He's had one game under 10 targets, Malik Neighbors, that is, in the last 5 weeks. Okay. Facing off against arguably some of the worst pass defenses you will see in a season in Carolina, Tampa Bay, Dallas, New Orleans, and Baltimore. Okay. Is Atlanta's pass defense? I know they played terribly against Minnesota, but are they in the same stratosphere as those 5?
As far as being bad pass defenses?
Yes.
I think you make an argument that are closer to that than not.
Okay. So my other question is, in a competitive game, do you think they don't pass the ball to Jennings?
Oh, no. Jennings, I think they're both getting their targets like crazy. I'm not saying they're not. And you're right. The risk with Neighbors is that they're uncatchable garbage targets, which is true. I'm just saying Neighbors is more likely to bring in the bad ball he's also way more likely to get the bad ball thrown his way. That's family. That's the issue we're trying to navigate here. So, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day,
it is.
You guys are right. I'm trying to like justify Neighbors here, but I think the answer just might be Jennings. I mean,
your point about Jennings catching the ball it's a valid point, but I just want to kind of compartmentalize this.
I just don't see how when you only have one weapon and you're the former coach of the year, you don't make him get at least 12 touches. Jennings doesn't have that status.
That's absolutely fair.
I'm not saying they're going to be good targets or they're going to be downfield. I just think you're getting them.
Okay, but here's the other fact that I'm just going to throw at you. Last 5 games.
Well, the Giants might never get a first down.
5. Last 5 games, taking out the Bills game, which was weather, and the Rams game, which was weather.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if the Seahawks game was weather as well.
It wasn't.
But Brock Purdy in the last 5 games has thrown for over 300 yards twice.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Boyle has never done that in his career.
Oh, I get that. Tim Boyle is not a good quarterback. I'm not fighting that.
Why I'm bringing this up, though, Joe, is over the last 5 games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that they've been healthy in. So Buccaneers, Seahawks, Bills, Brock Purdy missed a game as well. Brock Purdy had some health issues as well, right? You're looking at since 11-10, so going all the way back to November, 11-11, 7, 5, 8, 9 targets. So the targets are not in.
They're not that far apart as I thought they were.
They're not that far apart.
Bob, you might have talked me into Jennings here. You might have brought me full circle here.
You know, and like I'm not. I don't want to be like I said earlier, IP, you were here when we were talking about Terry McLaurin. You can't walk yourself out Terry McLaurin right now at this stage of the game. But, you know, like a couple people said, Terry McLaurin's kind of a scary start. Scary Terry is a scary start because of Quinion Mitchell, right? He's going to be able to overcome that. Scary Terry is a good player. And T. Higgins, you can't bench T. Higgins in a good matchup against Cleveland. You can't bench BTJ after what he did last week in another good matchup. If Mac Jones is able to perform. Nico, you're definitely not sitting. So it comes down to Neighbors, Juwan, and Drake London. And all things considered, the best quarterback out of that bunch is Brock Purdy.
No, I'm not fighting. There's no fighting that.
So I'd rather catch catchable targets from Brock Purdy. Regardless, I understand that he went 2 for 9 last week, but still, I mean, like that's absolutely
Jennings.
absurd.
It is Jennings. It is.
When in doubt, pick the better quarterback. This goes to the same conversation that we've had all year about guys like Ridley and Akine, as well, as that if your quarterback sucks, and this is the same reason that Joe's been off Malik Neighbors for most of the year, is the fact that if you have a terrible quarterback, or a quarterback that's not moving the ball, this is one of the reasons why he's been off MHJ most of the year and been on JSN. While Geno Smith's not an incredible quarterback, he's been giving JSN incredible volume, and JSN is a great player. One of the better young players in the league right now. The Giants are hurting so bad at QB. Is a guy like Daniel Jones on the wire? Malik Neighbors has got to be sitting there. And this is a Malik Neighbors origin story, villain origin story, by the way. I mean, you look at it, he's probably sitting there like in his chair, smoking a cigar. I don't know what Malik Neighbors does. Maybe he's drinking something good and going, I told you that Daniel Jones wasn't the problem, because I don't think he was. I mean, I really realistically don't think he was.
So does he end up in Washington 4 years from now? Is that you're telling me how this ends?
I don't know. Maybe they should trade for Sam Howell. Tracy in Atlanta or Kendra versus Green Bay. Joe has talked a lot, Rome, this episode about why Kendra is a decent enough play.
I think you're going to get a lot of underneath garbage catches.
Yeah. And if Kamara doesn't play, I think he slots into that Kamara role very well. And granted, both running backs have terrible wide receivers, and the matchup isn't stellar. I'm just worried about the 3 and outs from both of these teams. maybe I'd try to find a pivot off of both. But out of the two, it'd be Kendre over Tracy, I think, in that scenario.
So, Rome, for me, this is definitely Atlanta over the Giants. And the big part of this is because of Monday Night Football. I really think that the Packers are going to get up to a handy lead at halftime. And then because it's Monday night short week playoffs, they just play prevent and let New Orleans dirty time get yardage and points.
We hear that,
absolutely
family.
Irrelevant. And the Falcons
have a good one, family.
Falcons just ain't doing that. Make sure you guys click like and subscribe, by the way.
Rome, I think it's interesting. We're going to be back 3:45 tomorrow, guys.
Yes, we will. Make sure you throw your comments in there now.
I'm very intrigued by this, Rome, because you have I'm picking up. Yeah, it's Jerome Ford, Rome. It's Jerome Ford, hands down. Because I'm just really curious if you're thinking about Packers versus New Orleans and then Falcons versus the Giants, why would I want to start the opposite running back? Right? Because if that defense is doing good, that running back is probably not doing good. So there's some implications in the causation there. I'm definitely picking up Ford. Funny thing is, my main league, 9 Americans, 3 Aussies. 3 of the last teams left are us Aussies. Something in the water down there that makes champions. That's the thing. We want champions. We appreciate it, family. We appreciate it a lot. Rome, definitely Ford. Go out and get them right now. Start them over these other two. You won't be upset because it's a good enough matchup. DTR sucks, but Ford is actually all three of the quarterbacks suck, but Ford is in a better matchup. And it's a better matchup because, again, Joe Burrow is going to just throw the ball, do Joe Burrow things. Chase Brown is going to do Chase Brown things. In order to win the game, they're going to move the ball through Ford. I think that Cleveland's defense gives them a better shot at winning the game. I also think that the Giants' defense against Atlanta gives the Giants a good shot if they had a team on offense, right? But they don't. So that's an issue. So everybody in the chat, we'll be back 3:45 tomorrow Eastern Standard Time here in the United States. So if you're tuning in from overseas, please make sure to set those clocks. Reminders will come at you if you like and subscribe. We appreciate everybody today. We'll join you again tomorrow.
Welcome to Local Football Flavor, connecting the fan bases of the NFL.